I'm here to document the conference and also learn about gender balance. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for sharing what your expectations are, but also introducing yourselves so that we know who we are speaking to. I had earlier asked Rebecca to come and make the opening remarks, but I think I'll invite somebody else. But first of all, to say thank you for sharing what your expectations are. I think it gives us an idea of how to proceed with our conversations. Sometimes we assume that people know things, so we get into deeper conversations without first scratching the surface, which is equally important. So I didn't introduce the two ladies who are sitting by themselves because I'll introduce them a bit more when they come to speak on the panel. So I didn't leave them out. But for now, I'd like to invite Mr. Apollo Muyanja, who is the project director, and I'd like him to come and give us the opening remarks and set the stage for our conversation.
Thank you, Josephine, and good morning to you all. Honorable Victoria Sechitoleko, other panelists present. I believe we have Diana Kagere with us here. Staff from other lead firms. I believe we have about 15 lead firms we have with us here this morning. The young people that have joined us this morning, representatives from the media, representatives from the Private Sector Foundation Uganda. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. It's an honor to stand in front of you this morning on this very important subject. There is a gentleman behind there who gave us some statistics on the amount of money we lose in our country because of gender-based violence. Could you please restate that figure? 77 million. Billion. Okay, so globally, this figure adds up to about $1.5 trillion that we lose. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is a lot of value that we are throwing by the wayside. And this is something that we can change purely from a behavioral perspective. And speaking as a man, this is largely within our means as men. So I'll speak on behalf of the other men and just say that while we are with you here over the next couple of days, we are committed to learn from you. And not only to learn, we are also committed to make changes ourselves at a personal level. And also we are committed to spreading the love and spreading the message beyond this room. I believe it is something that we owe to this, if I may call it a community of practice that we are within this hall. But before I say much more, let me just tell you a little bit more about Young Africa Works Uganda, the project that we have in partnership with the MasterCard Foundation, Uganda. It's a 5-year project. And we have a task to open up about 300,000 new work opportunities for young people over the next 5 years. And it's not a simple task. Now, 70% of these 300,000 people have to be young women, which makes it even tougher. Because from experience, we have known from the field that even when we identify young women that are able to break through cultural barriers, social barriers, economic barriers, at their district level, whatever level they are operating at, other, let me call them, other demons emerge, and which we need to deal with, and they lead to gender-based violence. And so even when we open doors, we find that some other doors are shutting around some of the young women that who we are trying to lift up to another level. And we all have a role to play to ensure that this does not continue to happen. So The dialogue today and over the next couple of days is to see how we can offer support at different levels. I know that I'm addressing leaders. If you're not already a leader, you will be one soon. And so I know I'm talking to the right group of people. Now that you're a leader, whatever message that you get from here, take it and share it with people outside this room. As you can imagine, because of COVID, would have wished to be way more than we are here right now, but that's not going to happen. So our job is to play that multiplier role and ensure that the message spreads beyond this room. So for you as a leader, that is your role. And for you who is not a leader, I just want you to know, to hear it from me, you will soon become a leader at whatever level. And when that happens, it is our expectation that whatever lessons we are sharing with you from this platform here, that you share the same with some of the young ladies, young men, or older women and men that you find out there, to just let them know that change is within reach, it is in our hands, and it is up to us to make it happen. So with those few words, I'd just like to hand over the microphone back to Josephine. I'm looking forward to the discussions that we're going to have, and all the best of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we can do better than that. I feel like a teacher who is constantly reprimanding you over the same thing. Thank you very much, Mr. Apollo Mayanja, for sharing with us those opening remarks and giving us a sense of what's happening and what the project is doing. I want very quickly to invite Rebecca Kukundakwe to come and share with us the manifestations of GBV, maybe some experiences from the field and interactions with young men and women in the project. Rebecca is the gender specialist, investment and specialist on gender. Rebecca? Did I get that wrong? You're shaking your head. Okay.
Thank you so much, Josephine. Thank you, Apollo, for welcoming us to this dialogue. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming, and good morning to our participants online. You're very much welcome to this dialogue. I'm supposed to share with you the fact that we focus on GBV under Young Africa Works. And as introduced, my name is Rebecca Kukundakwe. I'm an investment specialist on gender. When you talk of GBV, or also known as gender-based violence, we know that it's a global pandemic that affects boys and girls, men and women. Under Young Africa Works, we challenge and demystify what most people think that GBV is about women. In our case, it's about women and men. Nevertheless, we recognize the fact that GBV affects more women than men, but also affects the men in different ways. And so as we meet here, we recognize that gender-based violence is happening in different forms. That includes physical, battering, that includes sexual. We have issues of rape, defilement, or even intimate partner violence. We also know that gender-based violence is emotional in terms of the words that can be said to you or we say to others, in terms of the language used, or even sometimes the non-verbal expressions and the movements. And all these psychological ways of how GBV happens can affect us differently. And now when we come to dealing with this issue amongst young people, research shows that 7 out of 10 young women have experienced gender-based violence in different forms by different people. And 4 out of the 10 young men have also experienced particularly sexual and emotional gender-based violence. And so when we go to our workplace, as we'll be focusing on this discussion, we'd like to recognize that we know that our participants here are from different sectors, different companies. And so for us, a workplace is not necessarily an office. A workplace is a place you go to earn a living every day. It could be on your maize farm, in your shop, or even any factory that you go to work on. So I would like us to recognize that as we'll be discussing gender-based violence in the workplace, we are not limiting it an office, as we seldom know. But also, in this place, recognize that as we work with young men and women are not an island. We interact within communities. So throughout the discussions, we'd like to get your thoughts on how gender-based violence is impacting you as young people in and outside the workplaces, and how we as a project can respond. As the project director really noted, we are here to learn from you. We are here to get your voices. We have high respect for young people's voices in this project, to be able to come up with other innovative ways in which we can address this. Lastly from me is to mention the fact that it's clear gender-based violence has negative impact on the performance of staff in a workplace, but also it has a negative bearing on how the young women and men we are reaching out to this project may be affected. Whether it is sexual harassment, it could have immediate, medium, and long-term effects. And because we focus on helping young people attain decent and fulfilling work opportunities, it is of high interest for us that we deal with some of those social barriers and the social issues that are going to have a negative bearing. As you've heard, we are doing this project under the lead farm structure model. And to give us more light, we are hosting this dialogue with one of the lead farms or private sector companies in this project, namely Protea Hotel. And they've been carrying out different visits and interactions with the young people in the field. And so I'll ask the gender focal person at Protea to come and really give specifics of what they found out as different forms of gender-based violence among the young people, to kind of give us a picture of how this is manifesting out there. So I'll ask Nida to speak, and then I'll hand over back to Josephine. Nida.
Good morning, everyone, again. My name is Nida Kamal, and I cannot express to you how it gives me so much pleasure to see all of you here to commemorate this day as part of the project. So thank you very much for coming. Please give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here today. So today here I'm going to talk about, first I'm going to start with GBV in hospitality, okay? We are in the tourism and hospitality sector, and we have this notion across the globe in hospitality, okay? The customer is always right. Customer is king. But what happens when the customer is violating your rights, you know? As we know, GBV is one of the most violated, violated human rights, you know? Your gender privileges and your respect and your dignity, especially, I would say not, and in hospitality we have this both for men and women, you know? Even men go through GBV in the hospitality sector, okay? So what is that fine line between, in hospitality we see this thing of, oh, you need to be beautiful and appealing and good looking in order to be, can I say hired? There's that weird principle from time memorial that you're in hospitality, you are, let's say, at the reception, at the bar, okay? You need to be good looking. There's a certain dress code we have, you know? Look good, you know, look smart, you should look nice, etc., okay? So we look at that thin line between you looking good, you looking very smart, and your clients being inappropriate, okay? They'd want to call it provocative, okay? So in hospitality, I would say one of the challenges we endure and we have to fight collectively is how do we create a barrier where the client knows, where the guest knows that this is my threshold, I cannot do this. How do we protect and safeguard our staff? Even to the, I keep discussing with Rebecca that we go to a point of even at managerial level, we have people coming to our offices and misbehaving with us. How do we deal with that on? So it's something I would just like all the gender focal people around here to think about. What are your policies in your workplace that are safeguarding both men and women from this kind of harassment, okay? And I think this is something that we'll discuss later, but it's something you should think about. What policies do you feel we should have in place? What policies are already in place to safeguard youth? Okay, so then I will go down to my experience in the field. So from Kampala Central, Wakiso, Kampala Metropolitan, we went down to Fort Portal, Kasese, Bushenyi, Mbarara, okay? So unfortunately, one thing in common is this. Women mostly, I don't say that this is a female-only problem, but obviously while I went down into meeting with our MSMEs and their youth, you realize that it is something in common, and it's not something good in common, you know? When we look for something in common, we're looking for something nice. And we see that the women across the country are enduring something that they shouldn't be, you know? From, unfortunately, a 15-year-old who was raped, okay? Now, her story was, I'll just briefly give you her story and her experience with the project and how impactful this is, like how impactful this project we are doing is. And so we had this lady, a 15-year-old girl, okay, who was raped because obviously they say, you know, schools are closed, girls are meandering around the city, you know, nowhere to go, doing things here and there, okay? This girl tells me that the project has empowered her in such a way that she was chased away from home, but she learned a tailoring and crocheting skill that enables her to pay her own rent now and have something for her baby, okay? Usually we'd see these young ladies be then homeless, go through more domestic violence because they've been chased away, they have nowhere to go. And these girls have learned a skill, okay? They've started earning their own money, they're making a living for themselves. But then again, we go into, do we want that first step in the beginning? How do we want girls to be? How do we want these young boys to be in the community? Do we want them to just be, you know? So this project really puts forth that learn a skill, earn a living. It was just between people just being home, not doing anything, moving around aimlessly, okay? So I feel like this project has given ladies and gentlemen who have the youth in the project a lot of purpose. So I would really like to thank MasterCard and Private Sector Foundation for this opportunity. And we hope to empower, I would be very excited to hear all your stories of how women and men under your project have been impacted. How have they fought their situation? You see, everyone or the other has a situation. How is this project, this funding, being able to help them combat the situation they're in? Is it leaving them helpless? No. There's people who are helpless, have nothing to do, no skill, nowhere to earn a living from. This project is enabling the youth to earn a living, to have hope for themselves, and work hard towards achieving what they want. So thank you again all for being here. I can't wait to get into the discussion with you. Thank you. Over to you, Rebecca.
So thank you, Nida. So from that, you realize that as Private Sector Foundation, recognize that this gender-based violence is a problem, and recognize the role of the different private sector companies, the lead firms that are present, together with your management, and we count on you. For the young people in this room, we pledge our commitment to support you in addressing gender-based violence. So make sure you speak out today. This is an open space, and we are here to learn from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Rebecca, before you go, and I'm not putting you on the spot, but I noticed on the program there's a tea break now, but the people online don't have a tea break from Protea Hotel. So I really don't want us to be taking tea and they're just watching us. So I think let's make it a working tea. Is that okay? Okay, so if you're at home, please grab your coffee. The people in the room, please pick a cup and pick a snack. And I think the only people who won't be picking a cup and a snack are my panelists, because we are going to get right into a panel discussion. So I'm going to invite them as they appear on the poster. You know, people say people look different on the poster and in person. So what will save you is some of you are wearing masks. We might not tell the difference. I'm going to start with Faith Mulungi, who is a digital and communications consultant and feminist. Faith, please come to the front. Faith is very vocal on social media, so I'm looking forward to seeing that vocal brought to life here on the podium. You know, people hide behind the computer. Faith, it's good to see you. Diana Kagere, who is a human rights activist. Diana used to be a journalist. I don't know if that still qualifies. Are you still a journalist? Okay, so Diana also brings that experience to this conversation. Pesh Ahumuza, who is a digital communications consultant and brand influencer. I also know Pesh Ahumuza from online. Oh, Pesh is joining us later, but Pesh is here. Pesh Ahumuza, please come to the front. I think, like I mentioned earlier, people see you on social media and then they don't recognize you in person. Who switched off the screen so I can read who our fourth panelist is? Our fourth panelist is Mr. Stephen Milton Owor, who I hope is around. Is he? Is he around? Is he going to be joining us? He's joining later? Okay, great. It would have been really nice to have him at the start, also for the picture moment, so they don't say we have a, that one. Famio, something like that. So thank you so much, the three of you, for being here early enough. We'll wait for Stephen, but let's proceed. He'll join us along the way. For the others in the room, please grab a cup of tea as we start the conversation. So each of you has a microphone, and I want us to sort of set the scene with examples that we've encountered. When I was going around the room, one of the things I realized is we assume people know what gender-based violence is, but do they actually know what gender-based violence is? So I want us to paint that picture of what it is with words, but also using stories we've encountered that will help us to be able to see it and identify it. So I'm going to start with you, Pesh. Would you like to start? Diana, I'll start with you. Please tell us what gender-based violence is using examples that you've encountered.
Thank you so much, Josephine. Isn't she lovely? She sounds even better in person. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the young persons here. It's always a pleasure to talk to young persons, especially in the workplace, about GBV. And gender-based violence is, I'll put it in words as Josephine has said. It is an act or an omission. You know, it can be an act and not an act. I want us to have that clear definition there. That is committed to a person, okay? And it can be physical, sexual, psychological, and economic in nature. And it's meant to harm, which brings harm to that person. The reason why I'm using person is because while majority of our victims are female and women, we also want to bring on the male victims. The numbers will also show later on as we keep this discussion going, that we have our majority of the victims as women, but we also have victims who are male. And then we also have populations that are not binary, so they identify themselves differently. So allow me to use persons so that I'm not limiting to women and girls, or men and boys. So that is gender-based violence is any act or an omission that is committed to a person that is meant to harm them in all the 4 different ways. And those different ways are quite many. We have many different forms of GBV. Some of it has been hinted on by the previous speakers. We have, when we look at the physical aspect of gender-based violence, we are looking at the ones that show that someone will slap you, someone will kick you, they will hurt you, they will cut you, they'll try to strangle you, they will be boxing. Now those are easily seen and heard and felt. Then we have those that work with the emotions, the ones that work with the mind. they are unseen. And that's where the omission sometimes comes in, the silent treatment. Okay? Someone has not done anything to you, but they are not talking to you, they are not responding to your needs, or they have withdrawn your needs. Let's say if it's intimate partner violence at home, someone is not providing. Okay? They've not beaten you, they've not touched you in any way, but they've just refused to provide. So they've omitted their responsibility in a home in the guise to punish you or to bring you under their control. Because you also have to understand that violence aims at giving the perpetrator power to bring the victim under their control, and they are subjected to that abuse as a form of a rebuttal for them failing to conform to the needs of the perpetrator. We have the commonest, which is sexual violence. Now, this also takes different forms. Apart from rape for young adults or adults, and then defilement for those below 18, we have other common forms that happen to us every day. And I'm sure even us getting here, you must have experienced that form, which is sexual harassment. On the streets, the catcalling, the sexist comments that the boda riders make, the taxi touts make.
Saizi yange.
Saizi yange. Ono mulya boilo. Kanonkalya. It's even a term I saw being used to promote condoms recently, but I don't think it's very, very, very good. Process by process. You remember those stories? They are real. People make them into jokes, but these are lived experiences for different victims. That's why I also find it difficult when corporate companies turn them into marketing gimmicks. They just don't sell. We are promoting a very, very a misconduct or a crime in itself, and encouraging and being perpetrators of violence ourselves. Then the issues of economics, I've touched it a bit. Someone withholding resources that you're supposed to use in a home together. Let's say it's a piece of land that you're supposed to use as a family or as a couple, and your partner withholds it from you. Or if you're earning, some of us who are in the corporate sector, we know that we have our colleagues, our friends, who don't even touch their monthly pay. It straight goes away to their partner to be controlled because he feels you're not in position to manage, or he's the one to manage the resources for the home. That is a form of financial abuse. Then the psychological, I tried to hint a bit, and I think Faith will add in since that's more of her area, where we have the abuses. Someone really makes you feel useless, helpless, hopeless. Now that can be done in so many ways I can't imagine. Someone actually you having even as simple as a corporate party where you're invited with your partners and they don't want you to speak in public because they think there are those comments of what can you say. Like you don't even have the ability to be able to speak in spaces. Now that's more psychological because it now affects your mental well-being. You even question your ability. You question your integrity. Yeah? And if it's happening at the workplace, you know that even when there is a promotion and you're eligible for it, everyone else will apply except you because someone has made you believe that you're not good enough. Okay? So you should be staying back and you keep questioning yourself, you keep being passed on for promotions because you feel you're not good enough. Someone has made you question your own mental ability. Now that is very tasking. It's as equally as dangerous as all the other forms, and people die out of stress, distress, and depression and anxiety. So it's also a very good killer. So with that, I hope I have been able to elaborately describe what
yes,
GBV
you have.
is.
You have done it. Maybe let's hear from Faith to pick up from where you left off on psychological GBV. Faith?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Diana, for that very elaborate explanation. Now, psychological gender-based violence, like we've said, gender-based violence is mostly about power. And one of the questions I'll start, let's say, for us that are online, when we are talking about gender-based violence, looking at the numbers, and you're highlighting the problems that women and girls go through, or the minority groups, this is part of psychological abuse. What about the men? Men too. Boys also. And usually those responses are not coming because this person is highlighting the fact that there are male victims, which sadly there are. I was chatting with Pesh yesterday. We were chatting for like an hour, and we were talking about, I personally almost lost a relative, a male relative, who recently has been pursuing divorce. And the now estranged wife arranged for thieves. And they just came to beat him up and almost kill him. So we were talking about the reality of the fact that men too experience violence, okay? And how gender-based violence comes from a systemic, it's a systemic thing where women are not regarded as human beings. And one of the things that as feminists we push is for women to be seen as human beings, not innocent angels that are infallible, but people just like men, just like any other person in a minority group capable of causing harm. So when it comes to psychological abuse, when you've understood the power dynamics about how it's usually the person that has the most power that is in a place to cause abuse, where comments like men too, even boys, what about the boy child? The timing is not so that we can highlight the plight of men when it comes to violence. The aim is to shut us up, of keep quiet. This is something that happens to men too. Another example of psychological abuse is Koffi Olomide, a renowned Congolese legendary artist, convicted rapist. Convicted, it's everywhere, it's in the news. I mean, this is someone that has been known when you're to read, when you're to talk to our parents, for some of us that were born in the 90s, his crimes have been known. Psychological abuse is when you empower someone like that to continue performing at the expense of his victims. I hope you get to see the connection, where we've seen society continually tell victims of gender-based violence, we don't believe your story. Let's even go down to, what were you wearing? As a girl, what are you doing in a man's room at 10 p.m.? So you get a victim to question how much they contributed to earn gender-based violence. We've been told, we've been socialized and told that, as I'm going to mostly speak about women and girls and people in the minority, because their dynamics are quite, for them, it's a whole other story. But let's say for women and girls, from when a child is young, we teach them that their bodies don't belong to them. Okay? We tell them, cover up. No one wants to see you naked. We think we are teaching them how to be decent human beings, but we are conditioning them to know that should you not be fully clothed and uncle touches you, it's your fault. Should you be at so-and-so's place, should you take a lift, should you eat that man's money, should you detooth him, whatever happens to you is your fault. Should you post photos online half naked, whatever happens to you is a consequence. So the form, of course, it feeds into other forms of gender-based violence, but psychological gender-based violence is as systemic from socialization, where we don't tell perpetrators that it is your fault for doing this to this person. I mean, I could even give an example, Josephine. If you're seated in a taxi and, God forbid, someone's phone is snatched, when you listen to the conversations, usually the conversations are around telling the person, why are you putting your phone outside? Because it's psychological. We've been told if someone does something to you, it's your fault. And so when you look at how omukazi abeera bwati, omukazi atuula bwati, so should gender-based violence happen to me, the first thing, even before I report, that I'm going to think is, what did I do for that man to do that? For that guy at Kaja to grab my hand? And then it's facilitated by people that think just because they go by this system, they are going to be protected. Don't hire a nice-looking maid. You know how men are. And men continually abuse their domestic helps. You go get someone from the village to come and study. You turn them into a maid. They are abused, sexually abused by, let's say, your husband, but it's their fault. So until we recognize the power dynamics and how much they play, socialization and how much it plays into gender-based violence, then I'm afraid we have a lot of work to do. But also, maybe as I wrap up, usually as a woman in this room, when your boss, there are bosses that are known. I remember growing up, I grew up around mechanics, and there were older men that were called Kalyabuto. Kabaya. These ones, there was one who was called Kazwaya, because of his way around women and girls. And now the psychological aspect comes in, that that one we know he's a renowned abuser, so the rest of you need to do everything so that should he abuse you, man, it's your fault. So if we recognize that how the system is built, it protects perpetrators while playing on the victims' minds, that it makes reporting hard. I was reading about the police numbers. I work with rape victims, and also usually the response when a woman is raped, when a girl is raped, usually the first thing that happens to them is, oh my goodness, what have I done? I am so useless. Like a system that tells women gender-based violence exists, do whatever you can to maneuver. When your boss is making passes at you, there are bosses that are known. I just do whatever you can. So we've been socialized to either find a way of maneuvering through the murky waters, or it's our fault. I hope I've explained it clearly.
Yes, you have. Two things, first of all, before we move on. I just realized that this is, I think, the first panel discussion I am moderating where I am not rushing anybody. And for me, it shows how important PSFU has taken this conversation, that you gave it adequate time to allow the panelists and also for conversation from everybody that is watching to be able to articulate issues. Usually we are rushing through. I'm saying, oh, thank you, Faith. Let's move on quickly because of time. But this feels like this was an intentional plan to allow us to actually articulate issues. So thank you for that. Faith, you gave the example of Kofi Olomide. And again, I'm trying to, because we have time, I don't want us to make assumptions that everybody understood what you mean by that being psychological torture. That when I see this person who is abusing me or who has abused me still able to be given this platform and shine, and I'm at home watching and I've never gotten justice for that. I don't even know what that kind of justice looks like. So I want you to just make it very clear what it is, because Kofi Olomide came and visited, right? But we have Kofi Olomides in the country, and we have women who are watching these people every single day. So just expound on that and allow us to leave this space with an understanding that this is what is actually happening in the women's minds or men's minds?
So, a lot of times let's start with the Me Too movement that took the internet by storm, where women were speaking about their experiences having been abused by popular and reputable men. So there is all these concessions, there are all these laws that are passed, there is all this promise of justice, okay? You're told when you speak out, the system will protect you. How do you expect someone that has been abused by a reputable man? Because one of the things, the other psychological things to gender-based violence is you hear things like, real men don't. Real men don't rape. Real men don't do ABCD. So there is a face that has been given to gender-based perpetrators that when you look at someone like Kofi Olomide, the first thing that comes to mind is that woman is trying to bring him down. All right? So if this person has, by some luck, because we know how the system is very hectic to, gender-based violence and convicting. So if this man has been convicted and it's on record, but he's still moving around as freely, still being financed. I'll even refer to, let's say, R. Kelly. There is a whole community of black people that still finances him, even after a whole, very numerous women coming out and sharing their experiences. What that shows us is one woman's story is not enough. Okay? One woman's story is not enough. And when you listen to the conversation around Kofi Olomide, his latest rape victim was a 15-year-old. And this has not stopped this man from living his life. Okay? From a society that tells us, speak out now. Why are you speaking out years later? And this little girl, 15 years old, has to watch someone that abused her go on, perform on stages. What that tells us psychologically is, who believes these women anyway? But then for the victim, it's what was the point of me seeking justice? So we have two sides of a coin. One where the other Kofi Olamides that we have in our society know that they can get away with it. I mean, you are convicted, but you flee from a country and don't get to serve your sentence. What that tells other abusers is no one is going to believe the victim anyway. The system is here for you, you can continue. But to the victim, it tells them, we really don't care about you. Sorry, not sorry about what happened to you. And gender-based violence thrives in a culture of silence. So when we see convicted rapists, convicted molesters, convicted sexual assaulters and abusers continue to live large, in the mind of a victim that spoke out or not, it tells them, your experience doesn't matter. Keep quiet.
Thank you very much, Faith. Pesh, I don't know if you want to add to that, or I should take you to the question that I had for you. And I wanted us to understand what is the relationship that is there between gender-based violence and domestic violence.
I would like to first add on what she was talking about. Hello, everyone. My name is Pesha Homoza, and I want to mostly speak about sexual violence as a form of gender-based violence. Usually, when you hear sexual violence, the idea that first comes to your mind is rape. It's this stranger who broke into someone's house and raped someone. It is always there's that man who broke into someone's house. There's that man who, or woman who found someone walking back home, and they raped him or her. But that's not usually the issue. I'll paint a picture for you, which is a bit very personal to me. You recently on Twitter, actually yesterday, there was this whole conversation about how young girls are seducing teachers. How does a 14-year-old seduce a 30-year-old man who's meant to protect her? So there's a school, you take this young girl, she's probably 12, she's going to senior one, and the teacher, one of the top teachers, makes her feel special, makes her feel she's very smart. Every time she's in a problem, he's going to show up. So I don't know if that is a form of grooming, that he is always going to be there. He's like a father figure. And quite usually you find that these girls don't have father figures at home. And the moment they get this kind of attention from an older man who is there for her, who is showing up for her, when she fails an exam, it's like, you can do better. He's giving that advice that a father should be doing. So you feel protected, you feel safe. And then you get done with school. Before you get done with school, no, teachers can't punish you just like that, because there's a certain teacher who will protect you. So the whole school knows that child, I'll call her Pesh, that Pesh is a favorite to this teacher. Pesh, you can't just punish Pesh because, this teacher will be mad. The teacher will show up for her. So there's that kind of protection, and usually the female teachers will call you a whore, they'll call you a slut, they'll call you all kinds of things. But you're just a 14-year-old who barely knows how to wear a pad. You get my point? So how are you a whore? Yeah, you're just a 14-year-old who's getting hips, who's getting breasts. How are you enticing this 30-year-old man? Yeah, there is no way. Quite usually in schools, you find that they put the blame on these young girls. They put the blame on the girls or teenagers of these days. They're very fast. They are trying to, even at home, you find that they're telling the teenagers, dress properly, don't entice your father. You can't walk around in a towel when your father is there. He's my father. Why shouldn't I walk around in a towel? Yeah, he should be able. He is a man. I don't understand why men are the head of a family, the logical leaders and all that. But at the end of the day, they are the ones who can't control their sexual desires. So that doesn't make sense to me. Back to the example that I was giving. So you're done with school, and then you're probably really good at this subject. This person calls you back to teach. You're still young. Call you back to teach. The next thing you know, it has gone from protecting you to asking for sex. Yeah, like if you don't sleep with me, you won't get paid. So it has escalated from grooming of you as a child and all this favoritism and all that to actually sexual violence at work. Because every time we speak about sexual violence, you are assuming that someone broke into my house and raped me. No. All the times I've been violated, I personally, I have been violated. It has been a situation of someone who I felt safe around. And I trusted them. They were father figures, yeah? They were uncles. They were people that I really looked up to. They were people who were supposed to mentor me, but then they turn around and they weaponize that, because usually it's just a form of grooming. You go to another workplace, and there is this person who's supposed to be your mentor. There's this person that you're supposed to work, to look up to, who's supposed to guide you, to show you the ropes around. And the next thing is you're on a work trip and you're waking up and he is in your bed and he's doing something that you did not consent to. So how do you tell the world that you let this man in your room and he violated you? They're going to ask, why did you let him in your room? But he is your friend. He is someone that you feel safe with. He is someone that if someone broke into my room in a hotel room and I didn't know them, he should be the person I'm going to. But he is the person who is violating me. Yeah? Secondly, you let him in your room, they're going to ask you, why? Why did you let, you know how men are. What do you mean I know how men are? Yeah? Recently, someone still on Twitter, I feel like I literally live on Twitter, but yeah. This person was asking, when a girl says, tells a man, for instance, if a girl wants to sleep with a guy, and then the guy refuses, and then she says, you're gay. You know, they use that gay thing to say, it's an insult. They use it as an insult of, if you don't sleep with me, then you are gay. But in actual sense, that is sexual harassment, and I'll explain how it is. You are trying to coerce someone, because sexual harassment is not entirely just touching you or doing something. It's usually through coercion. And if someone sleeps with you because you told them that they are gay, if you made them feel like they have to prove their sexuality to you, then that is sexual harassment. Someone should not be put in such a place. So that's why I'm saying that it is not only homophobia, because they are using the idea that you're going to feel bad because you've been called gay, but it's also sexual harassment because you have been coerced to say, oh my God, if I don't sleep with this girl, at the end of the day, I am going to be called gay, and you don't want your guys to be called gay. So it's weaponized in that way. And, and that happens quite often. Quite often. Just men don't tell these stories because, one, they don't have the safe spaces to tell those stories. And also, even when they tell those stories, their fellow men are going to laugh at them. How do you say that this girl is doing this to you? How do you say that your boss harassed you? If I get that opportunity, I'll use it. So you cannot say that you're sexually harassed as a man. But that happens a lot. It happens quite a lot. And you should talk to your brothers. You should talk to your male friends. Because it happens a lot that women are using their power, just like men, to take advantage of their subordinates at work. But they can't speak up because, oh my God, if I get that opportunity, have you seen her? Our boss is hot. If I get that opportunity, I'm going to use it. No, it's not that. She is using the power. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how good you are at your job. As long as, even if she's younger than you, but she's your boss, she has more power than you do. Yeah.
Thank you, Pesh. Please answer my question as well on the difference between GBV and domestic violence, or the relationship between the two. I think it's important that we articulate those so that it doesn't go unanswered now that we have the three of you on this panel.
Okay, so I'll use the simplest picture, that gender-based violence, I feel like domestic violence is a form of gender-based violence. It falls under. They're not mutually different. It's just that the thing with domestic violence, it happens at home. And then gender-based violence goes all round, from your home to your workplace to the places you hang out to the street where you are walking. So gender-based violence will include the border guy who is catcalling you. It will include the man in Owino who is grabbing your hand, which they never do to the men, but they, sister, kajin, kakano, you get my point. It goes from all that. It covers your boss saying they will not pay you unless you sleep with them. It covers your boss saying you're not good enough at your job, and all these insults that affect your mental health. And it also covers, I'll give an example, there's a school where I taught, and I'm still young, and then we were told that girls, if you get pregnant, you'll not have a job here. Straight up. So if you wake up and you get pregnant, thankfully I have zero desire for that, but for the women who would get pregnant, yeah, some of them would keep their jobs, but the way they would treat them at work would change. So that is a form of gender-based violence. When it comes to domestic violence, it is still under domestic violence. You have different forms. Like it kind of like works either way. You have domestic violence, but it's not just you being beaten up. It can be your husband refusing to pay bills at home. Yeah, it can be rape, marital rape, and for the last time, I mean, I think for the millionth time, marital rape is real. Just because you walk down the aisle with this man and you stay with him or woman, it does not mean that they are allowed to penetrate your body at any time. It does not. Yeah? You might be between this sexual thing and you feel pain. Your partner should be able to stop. And if they continue, that is rape. At any one point when you say no and they continue, that is rape. It doesn't matter if you walk down the aisle with them. So I feel that domestic violence and gender-based violence are kind of the same thing. It's just that with domestic violence, it goes beyond the home. With gender-based violence, it goes beyond the home, and it includes your workplace, the other people we interact with, that we are not family to. Yeah.
Thank you, Pesh. Please, for the people in the room, if you have any comments, any questions, within the next 30 minutes, I'll be opening the floor. I've also seen that we have some comments already from the online platform, so in the next 30 minutes, we'll be getting to those. I want us to move to how I appreciate the examples that you've all been giving. I think they make this more real. They make it more relatable for people who feel very far removed from gender-based violence, those feminist things. I don't know why women always complaining, but with the examples, it brings it home that this could be me, this is me, either I am the victim or I'm a perpetrator. So thank you for those. I want us to talk about how gender-based violence affects women, girls, boys, and men. How does it affect them? So we've been talking about, yes, this is happening, but psychologically, when they leave that space, or mentally, physically, how are they affected? And if any of you has figures to show us. Diana, would you like to start?
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, just for the statistics in Uganda, they are still quite scanty, especially in the workplace. We have the general picture of GBV across the country in terms of what numbers are for physical violence, sexual violence generally. But when it comes to the workplace, those statistics have not been very deliberate or explicit for us to say that this is the number of workers who experience violence. We just have quite a number of estimates on the global scale that helps us to estimate how big the problem is. But also now, when we start on the statistics before we go on the effects, one is that in Uganda, we are looking at 81% of all the workers being women. So that now gives you a sense of how much is left. And also, just as Pesh said...
Sorry, Diana, 81% of all workers in Uganda, and this is looking at every sector?
For most of the sectors. Agriculture alone, I think, is about 70%. So when you look at the corporate, also the figures keep on dwindling. But the biggest number of employees in most of these sectors, even in the private sector, are women. So now that makes them vulnerable for abuse, because even when you look at the 61% of those women are working in vulnerable sources of employment. They are vulnerable. Let's say Faith gave an example of the domestic workers, okay? That is a sector that is open to abuse, and yet it employs quite a big number of women and girls. I'll add girls because some of us employ young children, which is a form of exploitation. So, and in those spaces, the fact that the workplace is domesticated, it cuts between a domestic place and then a workplace. One, the employees in those environments are not empowered. They don't even have reporting mechanisms, because we've had cases where they are not even allowed to get out of the gates. She's violated by the homeowner, and then she has to go to the police and report this case. But even the transport, to get her from that home to the nearest police post has to come from her perpetrators, because some of the workers or employers hold on to their pay, and they don't pay them at all. She can't even hardly afford a sanitary pad at the end of the month. So those are the systemic challenges that we are also looking at in terms of experience. Then we have globally, almost 50% of women report sexual harassment at the workplace, which is quite a big number. When you look at the 81% in our corporate sector in Uganda, and let's say 50% of those are experiencing violence, you see that the numbers are quite huge. And also that sexual harassment now brings us to the challenge why most women would prefer to start their own businesses, which is a good thing, and not pursue the career, and then also others who give up halfway. And because personally I also have experiences where my friends gave up searching for jobs because on all the attempts that they tried, the interviews were meant to be carpet interviews. We all know the carpet interviews. You go, you qualify, you're almost among the last 3. Then you have that last, call it the last interface. And the person is like, you know, you are best 3, but to qualify, I have to get something back. For you to be able to beat the other 2, you have to give me something in return. And you know what that something means. So most women have been able to give up on their career pursuits in terms of some of the effects on violence. Away from that, others who are in environments, just like Faith and Pesha explained, that you get to a workplace where they even tell you, your fellow female colleagues who are kind enough to induct you, they induct you in this way. You get in and they're like, avoid John, Peter, James. You know how it is, eh? And you're like, why? Those ones are known. They are protected. He will harass you. So for whatever you're doing, please make sure you avoid. Then you even start to be conditioned. Don't dress this way. John harasses women who wear trousers. Don't dress this way. James likes it like this, right? So you're conditioned. Instead of addressing or holding the perpetrator accountable in the workplace, we are conditioning the workers to avoid the perpetrators and keep the problem going. Because even if I left at that particular time, it means that whichever female colleague will come in after me, will still be a victim of the same person. But sometimes our institutions hold on to these perpetrators that it becomes very difficult for you to report. And the good man image that we have, he's highly educated, he's good at his job, he's an A employee, he's always being awarded as Employee of the Month, right? And here you are, a cleaner. You're female, you're waking up to say, my boss harasses me every time I have to go into his office, maybe to pass him some things, or to clean up, or to pick the rubbish. Okay? So you know that the company will value over you, over the cleaner. You're replaceable. So it becomes very difficult for some of these employees to be able to report. So you find that some are stressed, they are depressed, and they live in anxiety. Because every time they have to go into that office, their heart is hitting. You just don't know, is this the time he's going to really pin me down and rape me? Is this the day? If it has not yet already happened. Because you even worry. In such scenarios, you even lose your power to negotiate. You have not consented to the sex. Your safety, your health safety is at risk. Does he even have the time to use protection? No. Do you know his HIV status at that point? No. So all those exposures can put you at risk. Even when it happens, you're still worried of what the outcome would be. Has he infected me with HIV/AIDS? Am I pregnant? Has he infected me with STIs? All those lead to a lot of challenges. Then we have challenges of performance. The performance will go down. For women or men who experience violence in a workplace, definitely your performance will go down, and your career trajectory will also be in the negative. So it really affects them in that way. Also, the issue of confidence. We usually have those meetings, planning meetings in our workplaces, and you have workers who keep quiet. It's not that they don't have what to say, but because their perpetrators are also chairing these meetings, they're in these meetings, so you lose the confidence for you to positively impact your workplace or even contribute to the production or productivity of your workplace, because you have lost the will and the confidence. And that confidence also comes from the fact that even at the workplace, fellow women are the ones spreading the rumors about you and calling you names. She's a slut, she sleeps with every boss. No one has tried to analyze what has led you to that situation, because there will be situations of workers who will give in from the sexual harassment pressure, not because they have to, but because it is what it is. That's the term that is being used on social media. It is what it is. They have to survive. they've decided to give in. Now, the fellow support systems who are supposed to be workers, who will then be beneficial in terms of reporting that they are witnesses and they actually know, they start calling her names. Okay? And of course, the fact that that sexual harassment will result into favors, even when she's promoted on merit, she will not feel that office or promotion. She'll be like, what if he promoted me because I gave him good sex last night, right? So you also lose that confidence. If you're a manager and a supervisor, you even lose the power to supervise people who know that the fact that you were promoted after giving into a sexual advance is affecting your performance at work. Then you also have setbacks. For those who have rejected those advances and have not given in, they experience setbacks. You're labeled as a troublemaker. Immediately, new staff come in. The bosses tell them, avoid Diana. Reason, you're always the one holding them accountable. You're the one supporting victims to report. So the bosses feel the new staff should be curtained off from you, who is a troublemaker, so you don't raise their consciousness or awareness on the violence that's happening in the workplace. So you also, there's a lot of retaliation. They call you different names. They try to make up stories about you of how difficult you are, how you're such a troublemaker in the organization. Promotions are passed on you because they feel you're not eligible, or you will give them a hard time during the board meetings. Let's say if it's a higher promotion. You'll be like, she'll disturb us with her feminist things. Let's keep her here where she's not under decision-making body. So that's how many women miss out on some of those issues. I'll let my other colleagues speak on the other effects, but I wanted to look at in terms of the workplace and also the productivity. And in terms of the costs and the losses, someone mentioned about the study on UNFPA. In 2012, I was happy to be part of that study that looked at the economic cost of domestic violence in Uganda. And true to what he said, 77 billion shillings are lost annually. That is 0.75% of our national budget being lost. Now, 77 billion, imagine how much change if you put it in your community, if you put it in your organization. How much will you change at that point with 77 billion? Just imagine that. So that money is lost every year. In terms of the time that when a worker is experiencing violence or is violated, they have to take time off work. Now that amounts to 3%, between 3 to 9% of your work. That if she's violated, let's say at home or at the workplace, she takes off about a minimum of 3 days to heal, go seek services, or take time off to be better and then come back to work. Or if they show up at work, they are actually seated in front of their computers and not doing anything because their minds are not at work. You know that happens. So their level of productivity is actually reduced grossly. And then in terms of the organizations losing money, we see also even as a country, for example, in 2015, there was a sexual harassment claim on the infrastructure industry that led to the World Bank withholding or withdrawing a grant of 265 US dollars. Okay, 265 million US dollars, sorry, the millions. Now, that was supposed to help Uganda develop its infrastructure. We know that was a source of employment for many young people. But that money was withdrawn because there were reports of sexual abuse of the workers of some of the companies that were being used in the construction industry. And even the sexual harassment and the sexual abuse not only happened to the workers, but also the community members, which led to an escalate in teenage pregnancies in areas where they were working. Now, that's how much violence affects the workplace. So that was work lost, that was money lost, that was development or infrastructure development lost. That money was withheld by the World Bank and was never returned in terms of how that works. So then Yeah, I think that now looks at the numbers in terms of the losses to the companies themselves, that you lose a lot. And where workers have stood up and sued companies, sometimes some of them have been asked to compensate the workers. There have been cases where we've handled negotiations out of court where the victim has seen that even if they reported, they will not get the justice. They've gone on the sidebar, negotiated, and the organization has to pay money to first to keep the image and also protect the violators or perpetrators. So they've been also negotiations. So those now are illegal dealings, because when a crime happens and you negotiate out of court, it becomes an illegal dealing. Now those costs are unseen of, you give me 10 million, I will not report this matter. You know that it happens. Okay? So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Diana. Before we move on, I want to introduce our fourth panelist, Mr. Stephen Milton Awor, who has just joined us. Thank you for taking the time to come in and be part of this conversation. Before you came, we defined GBV, we looked at domestic violence, and we're now speaking about how it affects both women, girls, boys, and men. And Diana, you kept speaking to the workplace as well, which is really the key area for us in this conversation. But then there's a workplace which I want Pesh and Faith to speak to, the online workspace. What does GBV look like there? I know you, Pesh, you said you spend your whole... that's where your employer is. And at the works, in that online workspace where you can't, is your boss online? Is your, how do you work with the other people in that space? What does GBV look like there, and how does it affect women? Do we find more women leaving online platforms because of the abuse that's there, and men as well? What is it like?
The online space is a whole planet on its own. I remember way before, there was a time where Facebook was like a whole country on its own. And it comes with a lot of cons, like a lot of pros, because we are connecting with people beyond Uganda. I can tweet something right here, and someone in the US that I'll probably never meet is interacting with my content. How many of us here are on Facebook? If you're on Facebook, you have a Facebook account. How many of us here have got a, "Hi, may I please see your virgin," from an Indian account? Send me your breasts. How many have we? It's the dynamics online are crazy, Josephine, because it's unregulated. Let me bring it home. A lot of us, when it comes to gender-based violence, let me first speak on intimate partner violence. A lot of us in the comfort of our relationships like to take interesting photos. Once in a while, you want to spice up things in the bedroom, you take a video. Or Bay is at work and he says, "Oh, can I see some of this? My stuff." So in that comfort and privacy, Bambi, poor thing, because Senga says, "Munange, how to keep a man." But then also, there are more women in Uganda than men. So you assume maybe the workmates are sending. Let me remind him of what he already knows. Bambi, poor thing, you go find your nice angles, take your photo. Ladies, may today be the last day of you sending nudes with your faces. Please, I'm begging you. Don't send those photos with your faces on. I'm not going to start telling you, don't send, because Munange, some of you and your bays have different preferences. But where I'm going at here is what Pesh said. When it comes to intimate partner violence, it happens with people we know and trust. So how the internet comes in, I recently handled a case of a girl who had parted ways with her long-term boyfriend. There is a cartel online, and this person, this account is known. It affected personalities like Fabiola, Anita Fabiola, Judith Hard, and now what they do, they go on your follower account. It is happening. You can ask most people on Instagram. Your account gets hacked. Now, for those of us who like to keep memories, of how hot our photos came out. So these guys hack into your Gmail and they get a hold of your cloud. So this young girl, trying to finish her education, separates from her long-term boyfriend, and this man pays hackers, gives them all these intimate photos and videos. Meanwhile, his face is not there. Like, you can see a man, but you don't see his face. They did a whole thread on Twitter. And for every thread, they would ask for every tweet, they would ask for money. They would ask for money. And the photos got more and more intimate. Again, this is someone that has done this to Judith Hard, we see, they call it revenge porn, but I don't want to call it revenge porn because these are photos that are shared consensually between intimate partners. And so we have women being humbled because finally the world can see your nakedness. So-and-so's sex tape leaks. I don't want to ask by show of hands, but many of us contribute to this culture. Kaliwa, kampereze. Ha, send me the link. Hey. Not knowing that that same system, should your partner decide to violate you in that way, is the same system that's going to be doing the same to you. So there is that aspect of the internet. There is the aspect of image-based abuse, where society has created how cute women should look like. I mean, when I joined Twitter in 2013, a Ugandan woman would not post a photo without being reminded how Rwandans are more beautiful. A darker-skinned woman would not post a photo on Twitter without being told, like we would see African and black men getting photos and calling black women roaches. So here is your space. You pay for your data. You know what you want to do with your internet space. But because the internet is a collection of different people with different ideologies, you're constantly told you're not good enough. Okay? People zoom into photos, and you can tell people who rarely stay around normal people because you see people zooming in photos and saying, oh, she has dark armpits, or she has a very big nose, or I remember there is a time someone real zoomed in, and I think it was an artist, and they real zoomed into her panty. So we have things like that. Yet the internet is an opportunity for us to, one, market our businesses. When the lockdown happened, lots of us had to go online because you're trying to sell something. But if someone attacks your personality, and the disadvantage about the internet is how frail your brand is, it can easily be attacked. Someone just needs to get a Kabot account and says, Faith Bulungi is like this. No one is even going to check them. So the internet brings in opportunities, but we also see it brings in a gap. While some people were able to stay connected and study, there are girls in the village that had to forget about studying. Or we see gender-based violence where girls are taken advantage of because they simply want to also be as cool. Their parents can't afford a smartphone. Na hebo mpako, hey, I buy you a Samsung. All those are cases where, because we are trying to advance, because we are trying to get with that trend, tubere kumulembe, there are challenges that come about. The other thing that I'll probably want to point out about the internet are unsolicited sexual, sometimes you can be there and a random man sends you a picture of his penis. Randomly. Like for me, I've had to even close. For you to DM me, you're going to have to go through a filter. And sometimes these are reputable men. I remember there is a day, because we feminists are called bitter and no man wants us, we was joking online and we said, how about we post unsolicited for penises that we get in our DMs? You guys, the feminists that joked got so many DMs. They were asking her, how much should we pay you? Bambi temutu swaza. These reputable people that we see around go around violating people. Let's even talk about grooming. For you parents who introduce your children to social media, You start when you've just given birth to the baby, and you're replying to yourself in the comments. The caption has, "Oh, my mommy is the best," and then the mommy comes in the comments and says, "Oh." So you create an online profile for your child while there are people on the internet watching their every step. So as we are giving our children phones, as we are teaching them about the internet, are we teaching them etiquette online? Some of us are big influencers, and some of us even attend things like this, only to go back and start attacking fellow women. You are a woman and you're contributing to rape culture. You are a woman tweeting about how girls that are 14 and 16 seduce 36 and 40-year-old men. So the internet presents also an opportunity for us to unlearn. It's a very good space for you to go back home after this conversation and learn about gender-based violence beyond this conversation, because we can't exhaust it.
Thank you very much, Faith. Okay, if we're going to clap, let's not be half-hearted about it. Let's really do it. Well, one of the things that someone mentioned earlier, and it was a question, yes, that was put here. It wasn't really a question. It was that, what kind of policies do we have in the workspace? But do we have policies at all in the workspace on GBV? And I'm glad that Mr. Stephen Milton Owor has joined the panel at the right time. He's the head of Human Resources Department at the National Social Security Fund. Please keep in mind, even if he's from NSSF, he's here to talk about human resources, not like your money, those things, midterm access. No, we are talking about human resources. So, Stephen, well, first of all, welcome to the panel. I don't know if you want to give us introductory remarks to the topic we're talking about, or if I should just get into my question for you. I just get to the question. What do gender-based violence good policies look like in the workspace? Do we have them? And I know you're from NSSF, but I know that in your capacity, you've probably interfaced with other organizations, and you know how other HRs do their thing wherever they are. What do these policies look like?
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, fellow panelists and the members who are here today. A couple of things I'll say and come to the question. My apologies for coming late. Everyone blames traffic, so I'll try not to blame traffic. I was in another meeting which went a little bit longer, but I'm glad I made it at the right time when the conversation is happening. This year, this is 2021. It's exactly 30 years since the conversation around protecting women against gender-based violence started. 30 years ago, this conversation started. How I wish we had policymakers in this room to ask simple questions. We have been talking about this for 30 years. And yet 30 years, we are still faced with the same challenges. Yes, the level of awareness has gone a little bit higher, but the question is, why is behavior change not more evident? 30 years is a long time, yeah? So that's a question I think we need to begin thinking about seriously. Secondly, I wanted to say that in matters of policy, there is a push factor and there is a pull factor. We can have the best policies in the world, but if the pull factor, I mean, if the big guys or the government or the legislators develop the best policies in the world and push it to people, unless the people to whom that policy is being pushed accept it, respect it, and see the what's in it for me, so they pull it, as in I love it, usually you don't go far. Yeah, you don't go far. So one of the things that I would have loved to chat with the policymakers of our society is, does it stop with just the push factor, agreeing what's the best policy, for example, around GBV, around women representation in parliament, around all these nice things that we want to do in society? Because we normally stop at just setting the policy and we don't apply our minds enough about the pull factor. Yeah? For many years, for example, in Uganda, we have had this thing about equal representation of women, whether it's in corporates, whether it's in politics, whether it's in generally in society. And yet, the truth of the matter is, we are still way, way, way below. It's because the pull factor is not there. What are we doing to make sure that there's emotional connection to the policies that are being put in place so that everybody is doing it, not because my boss wants me to observe this policy, but because I know it's the right thing to do, because I know it's something that needs to be done by me and by everyone else. How do we hold ourselves accountable for living within the policies that we have agreed as the right thing for us to do? We don't have enough of that. We don't have enough of that. So in answering the question that I've been asked, I will say the normal things. What are the kind of policies that you need in an organization to ensure that issues of discrimination of whatever kind, whether it's gender-based violence, whether it's discrimination against the disabled, whether it's about men or about certain tribes or whatever, it starts with clarifying the burning platform. Burning platform really means why the need for us to have this policy. As I said earlier on, if people do not understand and buy into the need for that policy, you can set up everything, but compliance will not be good. People might comply only because in an organizational setup like ours, there will be a stick and carrot approach. This is the policy. If we catch you not doing it, you'll be fired. So people might be coerced into adhering to that policy, but if inside of their hearts they don't see the logic, they don't buy into that logic, that's not enough. So the first thing I always tell people, because I get opportunity to speak with young HR managers, I get to speak with CEOs on a number of things, is every policy starts with the why. Let everybody be clear of the why for them as individuals. And whether you go to NSSF or any of the other institutions, the why for me is not necessarily the why for my next door guy. If I'm going to adhere to the GBV, policies around GBV, what does that mean to me as an individual? You know, I'm a father of 2 girls. You know, I know that what happens to that woman out there could happen to my daughters. How would I feel if that was my daughter? Right? I'm married to a beautiful woman. If whatever happens to that woman out there in a domestic violence could be happening to my own wife, what does that mean for me? If I've got that kind of emotional connection, then my commitment, not only adhering to that policy, but ensuring that everybody around me is doing it, i.e. holding one another accountable, it tends to create the critical mass for policies to take effect. So what companies do, and I'm glad we do quite a bit of it at NSSF, is whenever we got a policy that we have to introduce, yes, the senior management might know this is the right thing for our institution at this moment. It starts with getting the emotional and psychological buy-in of the people who are supposed to be guided by that policy. It starts by helping them understand what their why is. Because at the end of the day, anything about GBV should be intolerable in any organization. And you can slice it and dice it whichever way you want, but make it difficult for people to violate that policy. Make it easier for everybody in that organization to be able to hold one another accountable. Make it a shame for anybody who violates that policy to feel ashamed of himself or ashamed of themselves as individuals. Make it easy for somebody to be ostracized. That's a bad thing to do, but make it easy for people to be ostracized because they don't live to the values of that policy. If you're a known molester in an organization, or I had my sisters here speaking, if you're known to be the boss who promotes people because they give you sexual favors, or because we should make it easy for people to name and shame you, instead of naming and shaming the victim of whatever. The more we have the culture in many organizations where it's the victim who is even victimized even more. They shame the victim for having been victimized. The more that continues to happen, the more we might be 30 years again ahead, and we are still talking like we are talking today. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but my point is policies are important, but what's much more important than policies is having the emotional buy-in of the people who are supposed to be guided by that policy. Too many times our leaders spend more time creating all sorts of policies, all sorts of guidelines, and we treat people like robots or like machines. You know a machine, your car, if you're driving, you engage gear 1, it will do as you say. It doesn't ask questions. But human beings are human beings. They have got things up there. They want to be convinced that you're asking them to do what makes sense to them. They want to be convinced that you're asking them to do what's in their best interest, because we are selfish people. If I don't think that this has something in it for me, what's the motivation for me to do? So let's invest more time in creating the pull factor as opposed to focusing on push. I've decided you should do this and do that. Yeah. I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I had promised that I would open the floor up in 30 minutes. It's exactly 11, so I want to open the floor if we have any questions, any comments from this side. So I don't want to assume. Let me just see by show of hands if anybody wants to say something yet. If not, I'm comfortable continuing with the microphone. I know there are some comments that are already online, but if somebody wants to say something, right there is a green microphone that's on it's been put up for you. You can just walk to it. It will be the signal that you want to say something. However, if you're afraid to stand up and you need me to come to you, I'm happy to come and support you as you ask your questions. I know this room is a tough room. When we speak about GBV in the workplace, I think this speaks to, and though we've been speaking about it, feels like the NSSF offices, our offices where you can walk in and that's a workplace. But I just remembered an article I read recently about how most of the girls that are violated, many of them, I don't remember which district it was, are actually found at their workplace, which is the well, fetching water. So that's where they're going to find them and defile them. And that's their workplace. It's their job to go and fetch water, every morning, in the evening. And we can't leave those girls out of the conversation. So I want us to start thinking now about where is safety for women like this. If that is my workplace, there's no law that's going to be put, in the village that, I don't know. How do we go about that? But also, for all of the issues that we've mentioned, what do redress mechanisms look like? And as you think about that question, I had one question from online so far, and somebody says, sometimes these girls can heal physically, but they tend not to heal emotionally. They tend to develop a negative attitude towards men. How then can you support them emotionally at their work? So, Pesh, you've been silent for a while. I will start with you.
As someone who works online, I'm still learning, to be honest. I'm still learning how to figure that out, because you don't only have the boss who might send unsolicited for photos of his penis and whatever, but you also have, recently my mother was telling me, you should not post your photos. Just don't post them a lot and all that. I'm like, Mom, me posting photos is how I get paid. That's how we eat. So I have to post photos. But quite often, if I post a photo of me, there will be people who will bully me. Yeah? Because I don't look like the the conventional East African woman. You know, like a small face, the small waist, the tiny. You know how they usually say, which is usually women, we are expected to hate on these other women who look like that, yeah. And then when you find a friend who looks like that, she's a whore, she's a slut, but she's not. It's just that she looks like that, and most people go for her, but that doesn't make her a whore. And even if she was, I mean, how is that your business? But back to the workspace online, I have found myself that usually I have to fight for myself, to protect myself. When people bully me, I have to stand up for myself the hard way. But when I do, my brands that I represent, some of them will come and say, that's too much. Yeah, you represent this brand. It's not good for you to be out there and you're insulting these men and saying all these things. But you forget that I am a human being. I'm not Coca-Cola, that it is just a brand, and when you insult Coca-Cola, it's just going to go quiet. You get my point? I have a way that I react. And when you, at the end of the day, say that I might lose my job for fighting back, yeah, what exactly are you setting across? What exactly are you telling everyone else that you're not protecting these women? I'll give another example. When you Google the coach of the Uganda national team of football, as far as I know, he's a convicted sex offender. So he's a coach. What exactly are you telling Ugandan women? If you hire him, what exactly are you telling us? That as much as was it in Zambia or South Africa, yeah, where he's not employed there anymore. So at the end of the day, the women that might feel protected because it's not there. The sex offender is not there. But how about the Ugandan women, the people who you're bringing this man in our space? How should we feel? And I think the person who was the victim was someone who was selling tea, something like that. So there is the workspace fine is there at NSSF and all these things, but the policies that are catering for the employees, but do they also cater for the cleaner or the lady who brings? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah? Yeah.
Okay, try again. All right.
Okay. So what kind of message are you telling the rest of the people? And then, like I was saying, does the organization also cater for these young girls who come in and they're selling tea and they're bringing snacks? Does it cater for them? Because usually the people who are working in the organizations, the top people, they're going to look at them as, it's just some girl, she just brings tea. You never pay attention to them. But those people are harassed, yeah? And when we go back to your question, could you please ask me again, sorry?
I asked two. I don't know which one you want to respond to.
The last one.
The last one was redress.
Online.
But before we go back to redress, I want the first question to be answered. Then I'll come back to you to do the redress. Dana, my question on the girls at the well, the girls in the farms, the girls who are not in our office spaces where we dress up as we do now, to show up for this event. What is it like for them, and what does help look like?
Thank you so much. Of course, the informal sector is really very critical. They fall under the informal sector, unpaid care work, which is a burden, but also in terms of experiencing violence. Just as the other speakers have shared, some of even the perpetrators are persons in authority or persons of trust or persons close to them. So it's really very, very difficult for them to report. And just as everyone knows, some of these stories or some of the cases that we receive of violence, even the fathers, biological fathers, are violating their own children. So it really becomes a very difficult conversation. In 2020, during the first lockdown, many of those cases were quite many. Not because they've not been happening, but because this was an opportunity where the whole world woke up, victims and perpetrators cramped up in one small space. So where mothers are not looking, this time they were home. Everybody was home. We would see the abuse. Now it started coming out, and then the story started to come afore. But still, we were not so comfortable with how some of those cases turned out or how they were handled, which will then be answered on that second question that Josephine asked. What does redress look like for that woman? Mr. War mentioned that having policies in place is not enough. I want to agree with him 100%. Policies are in place. One of the challenges that we have, and the reason why those cases continue and even we don't feel satisfied in how some of these cases are handled, is the lack of implementation. And someone will ask, what does implementation look like? That's where I want to come out, because one of the expectations from one of the participants was, she's been elected as a gender officer, she doesn't know what to do. Honestly, this is how you have to do it. Apart from us having policies at the workplace, at the national level, we really have very beautiful ones. There are quite many, I can't even list them now. We need to look at how implementation happens. One of the key things that is lagging us behind is budgets. In the national budget, our institutional budgets, human resources managers will tell you budgets concerning staff welfare are the last to be considered. When cuts come, they are the first to be cut. So everything that deals with staff welfare is always like, oh, these are our staff. That can be, we will see. We'll see how to get the budget. They are always the uncosted items on our budgets. So that speaks of how best, even if they recognize this as a problem, in terms of having resources to implement, is quite a challenge. And then also in terms of the human resources, at the national level, our institutions also need to be supported. Just like private sector has really stood out to say we need to raise awareness among the young workers on what GBV is, so do all the other institutional workers, all the civil servants. None of them was taught what GBV is. A lawyer will come out of law school when they don't even care what GBV is, but they are supposed to represent you in courts of law, be the ones to judge, because they then turn into judges after some time. They are appointed as judges, they are your prosecutors. We need to ensure that GBV is made a public issue. You know what it is, how it manifests, how to support survivors, so that in whatever capacity that a victim gets to your office or your desk, you're the hope that that victim needs. You're the support that the victim needs. That their case doesn't die on your desk just because for you don't take it as serious as it is. You laugh at them, tell them how you're a big girl, go heal about it, cry over it. Maybe I should give you a week off. Yeah? You think about it, rest, then come back to work. Be the change that you need to see in the community. So also the systems have to be working. And then the public awareness itself. Do even our young children know what GBV is? You send her to the well the first time, we talked about grooming. She's touched, she's fondled, and then told not to talk. And she will not talk to you, because some of us, even in our homes, we are very closed out. We are not emotionally supportive to our children. We don't talk to them about sexuality and sexual abuse or how it manifests or how it looks like. So definitely this is an uncle telling her, don't tell your mommy. And did you know what? Because children don't talk, we always shut them up. You're making so much noise. You go outside and play. We never give them space to express themselves. This is an opportunity that they'll mention something that you'll be able to pick up, or you'll be able to notice their behavior has changed, and not that maybe they are being groomed or they're already being abused. So that redress looks like, one, us parents creating environments for our children to be able to talk to us, creating the public awareness that is needed, and the community support itself. If we know a well is a source of abuse, why can't we have our local leaders being held accountable to do something about it? Why can't we, as community members, sit as a village team in a community meeting and discuss this big problem called GBV, and we've tried to devise means of making public spaces safe for women and the young girls who are also working in the informal sectors, where regulation is quite hard. Implementation of these policies is quite hard, but it takes each and every one of us doing something small to create the big change that we need.
So my microphone was borrowed, and please respond to that question on the informal sector.
Yes, thank you, Diana. You've really gone deep into the well. Yes. Okay, so now what I want to speak about is, as I had mentioned earlier on, we started, obviously, when we start our monitoring and evaluation and, getting deep into how we can mainstream gender, okay? And usually our trips go like Central, then we go, get out into it, go Kasese, Fort Portal. Now, the graph is as such that you will visibly see, you don't even have to look for it. It's visible that this girl is in Kampala, this girl is on the outskirts of Kampala, this girl is in Fort Portal, and this girl is in Kasese. It's almost like it's her fault that she's in Kasese. It's her fault that she lives in Fort Portal. It's not supposed to be like that, okay? So when I'm in the field and I see, when I interview, because we try to interview each and every youth we work with, okay? And you will see a girl in Kampala, you will ask her, have you been a victim? Have you experienced any sort of gender-based violence? And most of them will give you an answer between obviously yes and no. They will explain it to you, okay? Which makes obviously our, can I call it interviewing and our feedback very smooth. As we go into the more village areas, when you ask a girl, have you been a victim of gender-based violence? Have you reported it? Obviously we do ask because we try to give them a reporting channel, okay? So have you experienced it? They don't even think and they say no. Why? Shame. Shame, It's just that this person is going to judge me, this person is going to think I'm weak, okay? My question is to the panelists and on that, or are they like, you belong to the world, Donald Duck, things like that. So I think leaving here, that's the kind of discussion I want to understand way forward. Who do they report to? Once they report to, sorry, I'll just, one more thing. I know you're going to be like, your time's up. So one more thing, when these women come and tell you, okay, I was raped by my husband yesterday, I got this, what is the reaction? What is the correct reaction? What is the correct answer? At this point, you're human, you're a woman, you just get goosebumps and you're like, oh God, I was just interviewing you. You were actually raped. You understand? So in between us saying, oh, she's someone's sister, she's someone's daughter, I'm more along the lines of she's human, period. Whether she's an orphan, she's no one's wife, she's whatever, like she sits alone her whole day and she has no friends, she's a human. So I work along those lines of how do we safeguard these women in different places, and even if they're no one's sister, mother, wife. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think also one of the things that I've seen lately in the news has been a lot more trainings for the police officers. I don't know if anybody else has seen that. I've seen that it's become more frequent that they're getting trainings on gender-based violence, and I would say this is because it's in the 16 days of activism, but I've seen it before this month, so I know that they're the actual steps that are being taken. So whichever women and men are pushing for that, we thank you. You need to respond to one of the for victims of gender-based violence in the workspace. What does that look like?
So I do know that
You want to say something? Okay, I'm going to come to you. Oh, before she responds to this.
Okay.
Okay, let me come to you. I know it can be a lonely place to go to the microphone. So sometimes we shall reach you wherever you are.
This is a continuation from the former speaker, saying that sometimes we are far away from the police station. It is not that, but sometimes the people we live with are big in the area or in the communities. Like as me, I faced sexual violence from my stepdad. So cameras. I don't need cameras, please. From my stepdad. But when I tried to go to the police station, they told me that my stepdad is known, so they can't do anything from me. So I had to run away from home because no one believed me at that moment. My brothers and sisters started judging me. And I felt ashamed, so I had to go far away from home, like almost 1 month, starving, living on streets, trying to, because dad wasn't there to speak with mom. Mom could just gives me eats and she tells me.
If you're religious, at some point I was even called Jezebel. I would appreciate if you don't tweet this part of my story. I was called Jezebel. Our whole church rallied against a 19-year-old who for 1.5 years had no idea why their caretaker would come to her room. Like, I got so self-aware that even footsteps, I would tell when they were the person's footsteps. But no one believed me. But you know what, my dear? I'm 31 now, and I am healed and I am better. But you are going to have to decide that you are not what happened to you. It was not your fault. We can talk after here because Pesha and I know a few organizations that might help. The saddest part is the thing that I've experienced. I run an organization called Amani. It's a baby. It was born out of my experience when I shared my experience during my time on radio. And lots of women, even a few boys, would come to you and say, there's a time I worked with a boy who was sexually harassed by their auntie and they ruptured one of his veins. But you know the saddest thing about this system, and I know I'm going to call out organizations on this one, we spend so much time in the SC. We spend so much time in these very fancy places. We sign off money, 16 days of activism go, and because you don't know the status of your rapist, you're supposed to go to a public hospital. Because the system is anti-victim, you just can't go anywhere. You are supposed to go to a government hospital. You are not supposed to shower. But as someone that has been there, the first thing you want to do is get rid of what has happened to you. So the awareness that we are raising, how are we raising it? How are we communicating? That someone like her, someone like me, does not blame themselves that at 19, a 40-year-old is coming to my room every night because they've sheltered you and told your parents they're going to take care of you. So some of the redress that exists is when sexual assault happens to you, and let's say it's rape, do not shower. Do not get rid of the evidence. You're supposed to go to a public hospital and a doctor writes for you a report and they give you PEP and there is a rape kit. The sad thing, Josephine, is in as much as that is supposed to be free, at Amani, sometimes I have to call my girlfriends because I need about 120,000 shillings to help the victim buy these kits. So you're practically paying 85,000 shillings per kit because someone has violated you. So the system is very anti-victim. We also try to raise money for therapy. Therapy is very expensive, especially for the person who was asking about emotional healing. It has taken me from 19. I was telling Pesh that recently Facebook flashed me a photo of my perpetrator, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't panic. But that has been work, therapy, counseling, and all of that. But when you look at the systems in place, there isn't so much information about where you're going to go. So yes, after you've gone to the doctor, you're supposed to go to the police and fill in what they call a Form 3. Josephine, we have policemen and women. You know what frustrates me? Even after the trainings, that still tell rape victims, but you, why were you drunk? We have an image of a perfect victim. If she's a toddler, if she's young, banange, pedophiles deserve hell. If you're older, you brought it upon yourself. So you're supposed to go fill in that form. And once you filled in that form, there are organizations that can help you. But then comes in the question, what does justice look like for me?
Faith, when you said when you're a pedophile, that's the perfect victim. But no, there's always a question. Where is the mother?
Where is the mother? Exactly.
Where was she?
You mothers of nowadays are very careless. We need, from here, to answer, I've forgotten your name, my dear. But to answer one of your questions, the how, it begins with us. I've realized something about people that work in NGOs. Some of us are in it for the money. We continually tell women, be feminist, but be empowered, but. So how do you expect someone like that to go to someone in Kasese and not tell them be empowered, but not too much? So do we buy in the causes that we say we believe in? 2, as an individual, what are your opinions about rape, about sexual-based violence? What are your values? Because we could sit here and I've seen people who share their experiences, Josephine, online, and people are telling them, don't wash your dirty linen in public. There is a case I worked on where a police officer told us, but that is the child's father. And the church told the mother, but you said for better, for worse. People, gender-based violence is not part of the ups and downs in your marriages and relationships. It should not be. We are sacrificing children at the altar of marriage and value and vows. So I may know a few organizations like Fraue in Uganda. There is Women Pro Bono. They help provide litigation for women who have found themselves in a place where they need litigation. We have organizations, FIDA mostly handles the ones about couples that are separated to help give women representation, but also maybe in the awareness, for you that are doing the awareness, how are we communicating? Because we are now having backlash of the boy child has been neglected. As I wrap up, the cases that I've worked on about boys, for the men in this building, please stop asking women to do the work for you. Get up and organize and fight for the boys and the men out there that are going through domestic violence. Our fighting for our rights as women does not mean or does not negate you also raising your issues. Because I struggle when I have male victims. You have no spaces to take them. There are shelters for women that are running away from abusive marriages, but there are no shelters for men. And what are the men doing? Besides promoting rape culture, they are shutting down conversations like this. So men, please organize.
I know you're going to say something, Milton. I just want to appreciate both of you for sharing your stories, because I think you read the mood in the room now. The reality of what we are talking about sort of sinks in when people understand that just about everyone at this table has a story. They're just not telling it. They don't look like their story, but they have one. And I want to ask the teams on camera, if somebody doesn't want to be filmed as they're sharing their story, these things are sensitive. The teams on social media, let's just be mindful that, some things should stay in this room to allow them the support that they need, but also allow them to feel like this is a safe space that they can share their story. So I know you were meant to finalize something, but what I will do is come to you in your closing remarks to do that. I am going to allow Stephen to speak because Faith, you
And with the permission of the moderator and the organizers, I hope I'll be allowed to go for another meeting, which is supposed to be at 12. The issue we are dealing with today, gender-based violence, is something that has been with us for a very, very, very long time. Like I said earlier on, we have been talking like this for now 30 years. 30 years is a long time. We should all be ashamed that in spite of all the work that has been done in 30 years, all the money that has been expended in 30 years, we are still where we are today. For me, I think there are two ways of looking at it. First of all, we have to acknowledge that we are dealing with what's really a fundamental societal problem. It's not a women problem, it's not a men problem, it's a societal problem. I am thinking we are in a way missing the boat in terms of how we are planning to address this thing, because it should never be seen as a women thing or as a women versus men thing. It should and must be seen as a societal issue. I think part of the reasons why it's not having the impact it should, especially here in Africa, is because we still trivialize it as a woman issue and women are making noise to protect themselves. That's the wrong way. If we do not deliberately address our effort and resources in deconstructing that societal belief, I can guarantee you in 50 years we shall still be having heart-wrenching stories like we are hearing today. So my thoughts are two. Number one, we deal with the issues as they are now. You know, the examples we've just had today, they are victims who are suffering today. So we have tactical approach of supporting those victims. That's where you talk about all the different institutions that provide relief. That's why we talk about the police. That's why we talk about all those tactical support mechanisms that the victims of today need to access. But the longer term solution lies in a strategy that addresses societal norms as we know it now. The norm in society today is that the men are strong, you know, the masculinity means you're a strong person. The norm in society today is if you're raped and you report, you're seen as the prostitute, you're seen as whatever. The norm of society today is that gender-based violence is a women thing and not a boys thing. Not knowing that GBV affects men and boys as well. It may not be at the level, the women might have been 90% of the victims, but there's a whole 10% of men who are victims. Ask yourself questions. The world population today, about 7.8 billion, split almost 50-50, 50.4 men, 49.6 are women. Go to the prisons, 93% of the people there are men, all right? Ask yourself why. If you look at the mental statistics globally, although the population is 50-50, 85% of mental cases in the world are men. Ask yourself why. If you look at suicide cases globally, you know, 72-74% are men. Why is that? I'm throwing all these numbers to you to show that the problem we are dealing with might manifest significantly more on the women's side, but it's on both sides. Which brings me back to the original comments I made. The solution to this has got to be anchored on a realization that we are dealing with a societal issue. The moment you continue emphasizing, women activism, what rights activists and all that, you create a them and us. And every time you have a them and us, if I know I'm going to deal with somebody who is a activist, women rights activist or whatever, my natural reaction as a man is, how do I protect myself against this activist? Because the word almost, and I'm not saying it should, almost gives the impression that there is a wrong and a right side. And that shouldn't be the case. All of us in society must feel the guilt that we have been entrusted with this love, with this life, with this country, with this village, and we are making such a mess of it by making other members of this village feel less secure than others. Yeah? The story of that girl in the well, we said, what do we do to protect that girl in the well? It has to be dialogue with the, look at this room now today. We are talking about gender-based violence. My rough calculation is that 70 or 80% of the audience here are ladies, and the 20% or so is men. Yeah, I think strongly we have to bring men in this conversation, because the more men come into the conversation, and whatever their whys is, it could be because they are fathers of girls, they are husbands of humanness. All of us have their own different whys. None of them is right or wrong. We said what we do to get to the psychological conviction of every human being, man and woman on earth, to say that God gave us this world so that all of us can enjoy it without anyone feeling threatened by the other person. I'll give you two quick examples, then I wrap up. In a tiny little village in Nigeria, there's a place called Ogoni. Ogoni is known mainly for oil exploration. Lots and lots of oil. Nigeria, just so you know, for every 4 barrels of oil that comes out of the world, 1 is from Nigeria. So it's a huge producer of oil. And Ogoni is the key place where it's produced. Some of you might be young, but there used to be a man called Ken Saro-Wiwa. I don't know if you ever heard that story. The life in Ogoni was such that the oil companies that did the exploration could do whatever it is, environmental degradation of the area, get all the money. A few local guys could make noise, because the money is so much, you silence them by giving them kitu kidogo, and that had gone on forever. Society kind of accepted that that's the normal thing. If you want to shake the oil companies, make a bit of noise, they'll give you good money and you keep quiet. It took a guy called Ken Saro-Wiwa who stood up for the Ogoni people. And he said, I will not take some money from you, however big it is, whether it's millions or billions of dollars, but you guys are going to have to stop the environmental degradation that you're doing, because it's affecting our guys are fishermen. They are no longer able to get fish. It created jobs for people. We will not take your money. Long story short is, all efforts to persuade that guy to change his mind didn't work. The government tried. He was imprisoned. The oil companies gave him millions of dollars. He refused. The guy got killed. That was the turning point in Ogoni, because the psyche of the people in that country changed to say that it's not worth it. No amount of money is worth our lives. No amount of money is worth our livelihoods. And today, no oil company can even attempt, because even if the most poor person who is going to sleep without a meal, and you give them $1,000 to be able to look the other way, they will say no. In our society, that's not acceptable, and everybody who try to is shamed and shamed and shamed. That's the kind of thing we need to do when it comes to gender-based violence. We need to have conversations which make it impossible, which makes one a villain to even suggest anything to do with gender-based violence. That happened in Cameroon as well. Many of you will know that Cameroon has been Africa's capital for elephants. The biggest population of elephants is in Cameroon. Because they had lots of elephants roaming the streets, we know the global business of ivory. A lot of poaching was being done, and it was taken like the way we take corruption in our country. Everybody makes noise about it, but everybody knows it's happening about it. It took one incident. It took one incident to change the psyche of the people of Cameroon, so that they made it completely unacceptable. Even a child growing up knows ivory trade is wrong and bad for our country. Before the things got depleted, now they are coming back again. So my point is this. We have to acknowledge that gender-based violence is not women gender-based violence. It's a societal issue that has to be addressed as a society. And that comes with the realization that it's something we've had for the last God knows how many years. We will probably not be able to address it over the next 5 years. It's not a short-term solution, okay? But does that mean we do nothing about it? No, it means we have a two-pronged approach. There's the tactical approach where we work with the police and law enforcement to ensure that existing laws are done. But the longer-term approach, which is where I would really encourage more and more NGOs to focus on, is how do we engage more broadly to create a burning platform of this issue as a societal issue? How do we create that turning point where that girl in the well, in the village, in Kisoro or wherever, whoever, even the thought of wanting to harass her doesn't cross people's minds. So even if it crosses, because we are human beings, the guilt, it's like many people who still have a conscience. We know that you can steal, but the very fact of wanting to steal comes to your mind, you immediately say, no, 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 that's not what I want to do. That's the level we have got to get gender-based violence on, where it comes almost as a natural instinct. That girl in the village well doesn't even need to report. The person who passes on the road seeing it happen should be the person to report, if at all we get to that level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Okiro. Let's give him a hand clap. I know he has to leave now. And we have about 10 more minutes with our panel discussion. So I'm going to allow for 2 participants from this side of the room to be very brief, and then the panel will wrap up. Yes?
Thank you. I think before we even think about how we should do it, we should also understand that we need to know the categories of victims of the gender-based violence. The girl in the rural area finds the word too big for her to understand it. The girl in Kasese sees it as an English word that she will not even think about it, whether it is rape or it is physical, because gender-based violence may understand it broadly so much that it is economical, physical, emotional, in such a way that a person who is emotionally violated, if she talks to a friend, the friend will feel like, should I say, oyogeza kajanja? If a person is married and the husband is providing everything at home, but violating her emotionally, she has nothing to show that the guy is abusing or violating her. The other person will be like, you don't know what you want. You're getting everything that you have, or you are already better than any other person. So there are victims who know they are going through gender-based violence, but they fear to report. There are those who don't even know about gender-based violence. Like, they know what they are going through is normal. For example, there are women who know in their culture it's okay to provide for the family. When she gets a man from the central who knows how to work, when she tells the person that I have to work for you, the man will be violated. But since we also think that it's a woman thing, we forget that also the men go through another phase of violation. So we should find out the categories first, then those who can talk about it, those who are violated by people they cannot report to. Sometimes the violators are the ones we are supposed to report to. So there is no way you're going to report to the person who is already violating you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your contribution. So people usually like contributing at the end when I say we are running out of time. So now everyone's hand is up. But let me find out how much more time they can give me. I will take a few more questions from this side. Question or comment?
Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Tusime from NFT Consult. I'm a gender focal person. Now, mine is a question. We've all observed that most of the victims, especially with, violence, sexual violence, they usually come up after. And being gender focal persons, it poses a question. We're supposed to help these people. We're supposed to be the, their contact. For example, in organizations. For example, I work with about 60 men. We deal with mobility, transport, border guys. And we also have female mechanics, about 30 in training, yeah? So you find that these cases could be common. But now, as gender focal persons, how do we get these people to open up? To break the Me Too movements, those hashtags, how do we deal with these issues in real time? Thank you.
All right, so I hope the panelists are taking notes. I'm just going to go around the room, and then in your closing remarks, you'll respond to all of the issues that have come up. I want to recognize the presence of Ms. Hasna Natkunda, who is the Director, Human Resources and Results with PSFU. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning again. My name is Okubal Patience. I'm from Landmark Millers Sorority. We deal in the maize and sorghum value chain, so the people we work with are typically rural farmers. So mine is a question to the panelists. I don't know who would be best suited to answer me, but I would like to know, as a gender focal lead at my organization, the responsibility of the implementation of everything that's going to happen in this room starts from me, because I go back to sorority and then I disseminate the information and then we start working upwards from there. My question is, we have done the awareness, but we also cannot neglect the fact that we deal with a traditional society. I feel like in everything we're saying right now, we are not acknowledging the fact that there are cultures that we need to respect, because you don't just pry in someone's business and disrespect everything they believe in or everything they've grown up knowing in the guise of awareness. So what I would like to know today is how best I, as Okubal, would be able to implement whatever we are talking about here in a cultural setting with respect to the gatekeepers, the uncles, the aunties, the sengas, all those things. And then I also would like someone to throw light on how to address the issue of stigma, because Rebecca had asked me earlier on why I had no beneficiaries with me today, and stigma is honestly the biggest factor in play, because some of these women don't want to speak up because you're seen as a bad wife or something around that realm. If you could help me understand how best to help these women address the issue of stigma. And then lastly, it's a concern from the inception of the program. We've had respect to the 70% and 30% figures that PSFU gave us to work with in regards to onboarding of participants in regards to gender, the 70% being female and then the 30% being male. And we see that we empowered a lot of women because, as PSFU can tell us, our reports are quite glossy. But if we're looking at it from the ground, we see that we've empowered these women, but we are breaking marriages. The women are weaponizing the power in simple terms. I just want to know how best we can strike that balance, because we cannot neglect the needs and the emotions that the men are feeling in the program under the guise of pushing the agenda of the 70-30. Thank you.
My name is Sam. Mine goes to Diana. Now, there is a sexual harassment offences bill that was passed, and I don't know how many people know about it. And if we are formulating, say, parliamentarians, who are we formulating for? Because the bill says, or the policy says that, it is for workplaces who have 16 and above employees. So how many of the, informal sector employers have this kind of, numbers? And why did we put it at 16, as in them? Does it benefit, does it make any sense, say like in the informal sector? Because look at a scenario where, a rich guy in town who owns, the arcade, or the Indian people who are, selling phones downtown, and they have like 6 girls or, 2 girls who are helping around, and they are harassing them each and every day. But the policy says you have to implement this policy in your workplace, you have to have 16 and above employees. So who are we formulating these laws for? And to talk about Faith's issue of, offline harassment translates to online. I happen to know a few things about deep fakes and shallow fakes. So the women who are putting their pictures out there on the internet, it's cool, it's okay, but there is an entire industry which is about 6 billion worth of, pornography. And they are using your, videos, your pictures. Let's say if I talk about the deep fake, is someone can get your video, short video, however small, however short it is, and then they make you, they make it look like you having sex with someone else. You get? So women should be extra careful when they're putting out these pictures, because even in the shallow fakes, they get your picture, like your head, and then put it, on a naked woman, and you cannot deny that this is not you, because they are manipulating the technology. It depends on how sophisticated the person doing it is. So the more the person is sophisticated, the more it is believable. So putting out videos and pictures is okay, it's cool, but then you will find yourself, somewhere in a pornographic site, and you're having sex with someone else, yet it's not you. Thank you.
Speak.
Good afternoon. I'm called Martha Kukunda, and I am a gender specialist with Zusa Girls. We deal in the rice value chain. And my question is not exactly to the panelists, because I know sometimes we do not have all the answers, but maybe it's something we can brainstorm about, and it's project related on this project that we're doing. My question is, how do we keep gender-based violence out of our youths? Because personally, I'm going to be dealing with around 5,000 youth. They're going to be on farm. It's a paradox for me. How do I stay away from gender? How do I encourage the youth to stay away from gender-based violence, or to understand gender-based violence? The number 2, I wanted to ask Faith to throw more light. She kept talking about how it's not your fault. I understand, I hear you, but when is it a person's fault? When is gender-based violence actually someone's fault? What are those things that some people do that could lead to it? It might not be dress code, or it may be behavior. For example, I might have a crush on my boss, and I'm throwing myself on my boss all the time. Maybe he doesn't even want to do anything, but the more I throw myself on him, the more he starts getting ideas. So now when he violates me, have I brought it on myself? Like, when is it actually the victim's fault? That's one question. Then, I wanted you to throw more light on where do we go? Apart from police, because we all know how that ends, but where do we go when any of our victims have been violated and they need help, especially therapy or counseling? Maybe you can guide us towards some of those organizations that would give us the assistance. I think that will be helpful.
There are very many hands. Everyone wants to speak now, and I know I'm going to overwhelm the panelists with the many questions coming at a go, but I want us to take all the questions and then you wrap up at once. So please bear with me. There's a hand here, another hand there. Wow. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mbabazi Margaret. I'm going to use Uganda. Ekibuuzo kyange kiri bwe kiti. Ntegedde nti bwe mba nfunye obuzibu like oba banrepinze ngenda ku police naye nze ndi victim. Nalina emyaka 8 nali mbeera ne sister wange step sister. Nze banzaala Gomba. Sister wange yali yafumbirweyo Busia. So yalina bawe nga ampita mukyala and I hate that word. Mukyala anjagala naye ekyavaamu one day sisange we yali taliiwo oyo musajja nankozesa. Teyankozesa mulundi gumu, yakikolanga buli sisange we yavangawo. Sister wange
Do we have any counselors in the room? Kindly.
Faith is giving some support. I don't know if you want to
So,
continue. Okay.
sister wange bwe yavangawo, sister wange yali ng'asuubula Kenya, ng'asuubula byennyanja. So omusajja oyo yatwalanga omukisa n'ankozesa naye yangamba ekigambo, bw'ogamba sister wo nja kutta. Nali sirina wakuddukira, nali simanyi poliisi gy'eri, nali simanyi ani gwe nnyinza gamba, ate sister wange yali mukambwe era nali sobola kwogera. Era ekyo kintu nkikuumidde ebbanga ne basista bange abalala tewali mwakimanyi. Even my mom saamugamba n'oyo sister wange tamanyi. And even now sister wange abeera ngamba tujja kuddayo eri ewa mulamu wo tumulabeko kubanga bambi yali akwagala akuyita mukyala. Mbeera mugamba tujja genda naye nga saagala. So kati omwana omuto myaka 6-8 nawe oba experiencing ekintu bwe kityo, omwana ne bamugamba toyogera, bw'onaayogera nja kutta, n'akisirikira. Kati bwe tuba twogera nti bwe kikutuukako ogende ku poliisi, omwana myaka 6 tamanyi poliisi gy'eri, n'ekifo kyalimu takimanyi, ali mu kuyita mu buzibu bwe butyo.
Okay. Thank you, Faith, and the lady with her for giving that support. I know that's one of the questions you're going to respond to when you start to speak in your closing remarks. Let's take a few more questions.
My name is Nadunga Evelyn from Bulambula. I work with Zeus Agro. For me, my question goes to Faith Mulungi. There is a challenge we got in our village. A man of 30 years raped a girl of 14. When we tried to raise up the issue, the parents said, don't raise the issue, for us we want fine. After giving them fine, the girl delivered only one child and left a child of 3 months and ran away. Such issue, what should we do?
Okay, and the questions are still pouring in. There's a suggestion here from somebody who says this topic on GBV is a broad thing that needs time to tackle. My request is to form an online platform and contacts for more interactions. And PSFU says they shall take this on and contacts will be shared.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Daphne Nagasha. I come from Bad, Uganda. To me, I think we have to put more light and emphasis on what causes GBV in our societies. And we can't, I think I'm really putting a blame on our culture. If we don't run away from these harmful gender norms, I don't think we are going to really have a very big solution over GBV. So I think our panelists, I'm throwing a question to you. What should we do to our cultures? Because it is the major cause of all this. Thank you.
Show of hands, how many more people left? Please don't put up if you had not put up earlier, okay? You take it, and the final question will be from
Thank
this
you
side.
so much. My name is Brave. I work with NICE. I want to add on that issue of those young girls out there. They don't know something about this gender-based violence. They're experiencing it, but some of them don't know about it, and they don't know that it is their right to report. A simple experience, I will break it down. Just recently, a girl, she was my friend, but she was a young girl, just 18 years. I had her knocking me at 11 p.m. The girl was looking like she was so beaten up. She was putting on the clothes we are in pieces. She was looking so miserable. She told me how she was run away from home by her mom after her dad had died when she was still young. She was living with her mom, who got another husband. So when the husband tried to harass her sexually, she refused. From that day, she had never got peace in that home. So when she reached my place, I also never had, this is my first meeting about gender-based violence. I never had knowledge about that one. But as an old person, I thought of taking her to police. She told me, please, don't put in police. You put in police, I'm done. I told it, so therefore you go back to your mom and you ask her to forgive you. She went back, she asked her to forgive her. The mother told her, I no longer want you in my home, you go. Just a 17 girl, imagine. She's in Kampala, she doesn't know anywhere, she doesn't have any relative. So, just because we never knew what we could add on, seriously, we need to open it more. Some girls and boys who doesn't know about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to ask, do you know a bit more now from attending this conversation? Has it been an eye-opener for you?
Thank you so much, moderator. I almost dodged this meeting, but I never knew I was missing something big like this. But I have got more information about this, and this is not good, really. We shall fight against it.
Thank you very much. The final question or comment.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Amuteno Sandra. I'm a bartender at Fairway Hotel. So much happens when it comes to gender-based violence. It starts from childhood. It's like that keeps growing on and on until where we are right now. It follows us up to workplaces, people whom we meet on the road, what's being said about us. But my question goes to those in charge. In as much as we keep fighting for, we've been singing what a man can do, a woman can do better. Can we do the same to gender-based violence? Can we get a solution whereby we communicate to these people to grassroots levels, use local language, get to radio stations, get to communities, so that they get to know this information. It's not just about these people who can understand English. You find like there's a problem that comes in. The women are seen as a weaker generation or a weaker person. A man keeps violating your rights all the time, and you have no say about it. You go to the police officers, nothing is done. It has taken years. People going to the courts of law fighting for their rights. But these same men or these husbands of ours keeps paying money somewhere, and then you are silenced. You cannot do anything. What's the government doing about it? Are we just sitting on that money and sitting here and lying to us that we are talking about ABCD? Yes, we are talking about it. But what are the channels that you're going to use? These police officers, they're so corrupt. They don't want to listen to us. Is it helping us now? Yes, I'm aware. How about the person in the village? Let's fight for that person, that weaker voice that doesn't understand English. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are so many hands. Rebecca, advise me. What do I do? Do we have the time to take all of them? Because I know we're already past time. Do we have more time? Okay. All right, so let's hear from this panel. Then I will start with you and come back for one more round around the room.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'll start where I'm most comfortable. My specialization is police advocacy on gender bills. Someone talked about the legal framework somewhere around there, and they asked about the sexual offences bill. Now, the bill is still bill because it's not yet been signed into law, and there are so many uncomfortable clauses that are still under negotiation between the law drafters, that's Parliament, the President, and the women movement. But once it's passed, we'll be able to at least have another policy that is specifically addressing sexual violence at the workplace, in the public and private spheres. But I wanted to draw your attention to the Employment Act. In 2020, the Employment Amendment Bill was passed into law, which amended some of the issues that you raised in terms of the old only provided that a workplace could be considered a workplace if it was employing more than 25 persons, and then it was mandated to have a policy if it had more than 25 persons. I would like to let you know that in the amendment bill, all those issues have been catered for. It has been revised to even recognize a home as a workplace. Initially, domestic workers were not recognized as formal workers. Right now, that has been dealt with. But because the law was passed during, I think before the onset of COVID, the regulations are yet to be out, implementation is yet to be seen. So you might have to see those changes coming into effect, let's say, 5 years from now. But the law at least has been amended to address those gaps. It now doesn't require, it makes it mandatory that even if you just have one employee, at least you should have a reporting mechanism when sexual harassment happens at the workplace. So that also employs us in our homes to support our maids and our domestic workers and give them a referral pathway on how to report. I'll also skip and answer a bit of Nida's questions, and then someone who asked, what do we do? Several of us are coming from different organizations, and you're asking, what do we do? How do we handle these cases? Now, part of what we can do, apart from us leaving this room with this information and supporting our other colleagues, it's now visible that while the management might have a clue of what GBV is, our employees don't. So part of the recommendations that we usually make to institutions is to start with, we usually have those capacity building trainings. Can GBV be part of the package? As you're inducting your new staff, can GBV be part of the package? As you're taking them through the policies, can you take time off for the new staff as you're taking them to the retreat to teach them about your product so they can sell? Let's say if they are sales marketing executives. As you're teaching them how to sell your product, can GBV be part and parcel of those packages for the human resource managers and managers, everybody else? So it's part and parcel. Secondly, one of the issues that employees also grapple with is where to report. Can we have a referral pathway? If I'm not comfortable to report within the organization, are there mechanisms where I can seek redress outside? Probably PSFU as an apex body for corporate companies. Could we have a sexual harassment committee that, let's say if I'm working at Protea and I'm unable to report within the Protea mechanisms, is there somewhere outside Protea that I can report and management of Protea is brought on board, my issue is handled, and and I'm supported throughout the system? That's the kind of referral that I would want to see. And it will also apply to those who are asking if you're working at, someone said they're working at a farm with over 5,000 people. Apart from the training, create the mechanisms in which the people can report or your workers can report internally and externally. And the beauty about it, when you create those pathways, please don't keep that as another document to put somewhere and people forget. Can we have those pathways drawn up, printed, and put all over the notes boards within our workplaces? Those boards on the walls, the way we put prevent COVID, wear a mask, print the pathway, put it wherever it's visible, put it in the bathrooms, put it in the toilets, put it everywhere, so that even if someone missed the training, they will be inquisitive to know what is this GBV, what is this pathway that they are talking about. Their inquisition will raise their consciousness for them to learn more and ask, and then when they experience the violence, they are able to seek the support that they need. One other contribution that I'll bring out here that I'll probably liaise with Rebecca is that at Center for Domestic Violence Prevention, we had developed a referral directory highlighting all organizations working on GBV and the different services they give, where they are working. Let's say an organization can have an office in Kampala but working in over 60 districts. Where they are working, contacts of those districts, and the kind of services they provide in relation to GBV. I'm going to be able, after this, I'm going to send it to Rebecca, circulate to the other PSFU members and all the others who are interested, so you have a document from where to start from. It's not much, but we had invested so much in those organizations, and the reason why they appear there is because a lot of time was taken to select these organizations, give support to their staff, that we expect when you reach out to them, you will be handled in a manner that is victim-centered and that is supportive to you. We cannot guarantee 100%, but we can guarantee that a lot of investment has gone into building their capacity to be able to support you, and you'll also feel supported and you will not feel re-victimized. And should you have feedback, there are also mechanisms for you to report back and say, I went to so and this is how they treated me. And we have an accountable mechanism where we'll be able to hold our service providers accountable for the way they have handled you as a victim. So I think that is what I also wanted to promise to share to the team. I'll let the rest of my fellow panelists handle the other questions.
In meetings like this, a lot of times people keep quiet. Sometimes because of shame, the others because of guilt, and the others because we think, but I'm so grateful that you've asked questions. And unfortunately, I may not have 1,001 of them. I will start with culture. There was the question, I think one of the last ones about culture. A lot of times when you talk about cultures and attitude, we look at the kabaka, the chiefs, the what, but culture starts with us. I come from Busoga, And I remember there was a time where organizations went and there was a survey that was carried out, and women from my region believe that there are justifiable reasons for a man to beat you. In fact, for some of them, they even thought that if a man does not beat you, I'm going to tie this in with the question of how about the people who and their victims that bring this upon themselves. Why I say that culture begins with us. Culture is what we believe. Culture is our mindset. Culture are the things we tweet even after you've attended 1,001 conferences on gender-based violence, because it's what you as a person hold dear. So let's start with our personal values. Someone has said that we sit in here and talk. It's because we are entrusting you to go. You guys, when it comes to gender-based violence, all of us have a role. Can your friends call you and say, hi, my boyfriend kicked me? Or are you the kind of friend who is going to defend? Because a lot of times, yes, the police has, I don't even want to make excuses for them. I deal with them on a daily. But as individuals, in my case, my caretaker, the lady, when I tried opening up about what was happening to me, the first thing she thought is, I need to protect my marriage. You're trying to steal my husband. We have relatives whom we cannot tell, I'm sorry, I can't come to your event because your husband did ABCD. That is part of culture. And what they call that generally is rape culture. Gender-based violence thrives in a system that victimizes the victim further and protects the perpetrator, whether male or female. So in the event, the conversation about someone throwing themselves at the boss reminds me of the conversation that has been happening on Twitter of, oh, how about those students who would sit like this in class and tempt the teachers? I need us to understand gender-based violence happens when someone with power, when someone is using their power, their authority to victimize someone from below. Where is the responsibility? If you are a man or if you are a woman here and your domestic worker is throwing themselves at you, you are the one with the power. What they are doing on their part is sexual coercion. Okay? Do we understand the difference? It becomes gender-based violence. It becomes sexual harassment. It becomes sexual abuse when there is power dynamics. Okay? I am not saying that there are not there are no people that don't have power that coerce. Okay? But for as long as you are the one with the power, you have the responsibility. If we understand that, I'll say this in Uganda, ng'abakazi abafumbo, omwana w'omuto kizibwewo talina maanyi, talina buyinza, busobola kusuula bbaawo mu kukemebwa, kubanga bbaawo yalina amaanyi. Bwe mugenda mu makanisa okulayira, mulayira abantu aba. So there are two people that are supposed to keep that vow. Culture trains us to look at other women as competition where men are concerned. So check yourself. When your maid comes and says, Tata Gundi, is your response first wabadde oyambadde ki? Because that is how we contribute to culture. I hope we've understood the power dynamics. I hope we've understood the fact that as someone in power, the person below you can only coerce you. Okay? Because you have the power. So when you misuse that power, it's the same way how police has the power to help us, but they refuse. Do you understand how those dynamics work? So if someone is in a place of power and they are misusing it, that is where I'll also speak on this for people who keep on saying we've over-empowered women and neglected men. If men were not abusing the power they hold in society, there would be no need for women empowerment. And as you're coming up with programs to empower society, I don't believe in that 70-30 thing, but your why as an organization, why? That's probably because you've seen the need. So instead of saying, oh, we are over-empowering women for marriage, how about you go back to the drawing board and say, how do we start up policies, programs for men so that they evolve? I usually say on my social media platforms, most of the men we see here still want to replicate the things they had their great-grandparents say. But the world has changed. So men, you need to evolve. I rarely speak about men's experience because I'm a woman. I don't know what it's like to be a man. But if you are a man who only wants to benefit from women emancipation, and to even tell you a story, I have a friend, a man. He went to Chisenyi, started up an empowerment program for men. It was to train men on finances. Josephine, the men would not go. They preferred to sit in jambula trees and play Ludo. And they would tell them, ebyo bintu by'abakazi. When they diverted that program and turned it into a women empowerment program, the men would escort their women and say, abasomesa, abakazi babano tubabaletedde. A man, he called me up because he used to find my feminism very radical. He called me up and said, what is wrong with the men in this society? And I am like, I am a woman. So one of the things that hurts me so much is that you women have bought the lie that you're over-empowered. You are not. You are one step away from being reminded that the system was not meant for you. So if you are establishing programs that are to reach the men, either the men need to evolve. If you saw, when you ask men to describe their mothers, you'll hear a slave who suffered, oh, my mother suffered, my mother, and men go around looking for women in that lens. I promise you, wait for Mother's Day. My mother starved, my mother. And these are men who do not want to evolve. Women are establishing spaces to evolve. So for you that have the power, as you are making programs for the men, one, are they willing to let go of the lie that the patriarchy has given them? The other thing someone asked me about is spaces in Uganda. The truth of the matter is there are certain spaces that are known, okay? Especially that you can run to. I briefly want to explain this because I feel like there was a disconnect. When I was explaining about the procedures of how rape victims are helped, if you want to pursue justice, I don't know if I should say this in Uganda, but if someone has been sexually harassed, there are ways, especially if someone wants to go to court. The first thing you need to do, and I know it's very painful, if you know a girl or someone that has been raped, what is required for the legal process is evidence, okay? But because you can't be in the middle of a rape and record it, because this is something that you don't expect. If someone comes to you and they've been raped, the first thing, especially if they've not showered yet, please encourage them not to shower. Get them, take them to the hospital, a public hospital. This is because by our laws, they only take doctor's notes that are written from a public hospital. The doctor then checks you, and then they give you PEP and a rape kit. Those are things you present to the police so that they write for you a police form 3. And then when you want to pursue justice, that's what happens. But for the certain organizations, there are quite a number. I hope that in the list that Diana sends out, because I can't read them out, there are quite many. It's just that the dissemination of the information has not been provided for. I don't know if I've answered most of the questions. Or the other one of culture, traditional society. We make the traditional society. So let us, we uphold it and promote it as well. It's very true. So as we are trying to promote these policies, let us evaluate. I recently was part of a conversation in Karamoja. They have female genital mutilation and they have early marriages and child marriages. We need to evaluate where certain cultural practices need to die off, because we are not slaves to culture, especially when it's affecting the lives of the people that are supposed to uphold it. Thank you, Josephine.
Thank you very much, Faith. We've really run out of time, so I'm going to just allow her to ask her question, because she was giving me the evil eye. So please ask your question, and then we will close the event.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Lake Susan Favor once again. I come from Boyachinawataka. Mine is something that has just happened 2 months ago before I gave birth. My husband, I will call him my husband, because I had that expectation that one day we'll be together. I was pregnant. He wakes up early in the morning, tells me I'm going for work. Now to hear like 2 hours, he has gone to visit one of the woman's place. And I'm here 2 weeks to theater for the operation. So I became devastated. I was almost going to die with the pregnancy. And I remember she ran home to come and see how I was when I had the news. But they didn't find me at home. Now, assuming another woman, if you were me, what would you do in that time? It's just something of 2 months ago. That kind of pain. When you want to call him, you have no access until, I don't know, even picking your calls. We have 2 children. Even picking your calls is a problem sometimes. And your children are asking, where is daddy? He's not there. You're not seeing the man. You don't know where he is. The time he feels like having sex with you is when he looks for you. And you have to really give in, because you're depending on him financially. What would you do if you were me in that state?
What would you do? Pesh, I'm going to start with you as you respond to her question. If there is any of the others that you picked up along the way, please respond to that as you make your closing remarks in 1 minute. Then I will come to you, Faith, to do the same in 1 minute. And finally, Diana, in 1 minute. Pesh.
So there are shelters that I have worked with in the past. Maybe I'll share them with you. Maybe they know people who stay around where you stay that also help these women. So he is weaponizing the fact that you are not economically empowered to abuse you, to take something from you. And you are emotionally abused. You have been sexually abused. And I'm so sorry that you are going through this. I'm sorry that you went through that. I have also been a victim of rape. The first time was as 12 years old, with someone I was related to, and my mother doesn't know. So I hear you, and I'm really sorry that you went through that. Back to you. I've been brought up in a home with a single mother, and I know how hard it is. So I know how hard it is for you to walk away from this person because you're looking out for your children. But your children will not have a mother who will take care of them when you're dead. Your children will not have a proper home. No one is going to love your children as much as you do. So for you to walk out of this space, you need an organization that's going to help you. And as earlier, like I was saying, we're sitting here and we're having all these conversations and all that, but there are grassroots organizations that actually help you. There are people who are going to hold your hand, but they do not have all these reports and these fancy offices and ACs. They don't have them, but they'll hold your hand. You need to be economically empowered to get out of this space. And when you get a job and you get to start something, then you'll have to start working on your emotional healing. Because at one point, you're going to start bleeding onto your children because Quite often you find in single parent homes, a single parent saying, you're like this, you're like your father. Nothing hurts me like someone telling me that I'm like my father. I mean, I know I do so many things that are like him, but I don't like it, yeah, because he was emotionally abusive to my mother, yeah, and there's so many things that I've gone through, but you need support. And the one thing that has helped me is economic empowerment. That at the end of the day, I have my home that I go to, and I pay my bills, and I don't have anyone who is saying, for you to have this, you have to do this for me. But then again, for the women who are economically empowered, you're not very far away from this. Still, it's going to be your boss. It's going to be your lover. You might have that job, but at the end of the day, you don't want to look too empowered. So your husband asks for sex, you say no, but you don't want to look too empowered, so you just give in. So you're not away from this. And some question that has been going around, please remind me to share the organizations with you. Something that has been going around, I'm wrapping up, that how do we help? How do we help the victims? And I'm going to be very honest, we might come up with all these theories of go to police, do therapy, blah, blah, blah. When I was 12, I don't even remember what I wanted, because there is no textbook reference of how you should help victims. Yeah, just because in your mind you think patients need to go to the police, you go to the police and the person who is checking you is a doctor. And that they are prodding you, they are checking, it's like you're relieving the situation, yeah? It is so much. So you cannot tell me, and then you tell me, go to therapy. I don't want to sit down every day and tell this stranger what I've gone through, yeah? So maybe I just want to hide in my room and cry it away. Maybe I want to go to police. So there is no textbook way of dealing with these things. The stories that I earlier shared about school and about the work trip, those were my stories. Those are things that I lived. But in that moment, it wasn't police. It wasn't therapy. I needed to cry it out. I needed to deal with it. And I'm really grateful for my friends. So when your friend comes up to you, please be there for them. That is the first step. Be there for them. Ask them, how can I help? Don't say, let's go to police. Say, how can I help? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Patience. I know this is a hard ask that I'm asking of all of you, but I also know that we have an online audience that's following, and our guest speaker is already in the room, so I want us to wrap up to allow for that. And also, as you speak, please, will one of you speak to the mental health?
Okay, here is to trying at summarizing in a minute. I would like to thank the PSFU for organizing a conversation like this. Having these conversations is not in vain, and I'm hoping that for most of us that have gone through gender-based violence, I hope that you feel seen and heard, that you know you're not the only one, and that it was not your fault, and that until society puts consequences to men that leave their families, to men or women that prey on their bosses, it is not your fault, okay? People just do what they can do because the system enables them. The other thing that I want to request PSFU to do, for the people that are in this space, the contacts that are going to be shared, can they be shared with these different workplaces so that at least the hope is that the employees can know that for someone that has heard about gender-based violence for the first time, that we will also go out and be the change that we want to see, that we will be safe spaces and support systems for the people that open up to us. I'll also add, guys, people's gender-based violence stories are not lugambo. They are not conversations we should have over tea. If you've seen that someone's nudes have leaked, be one of the people that stops the chain. Don't be the one that is circulating, because as we talked about culture, this culture includes you and I. So what we do in that instance helps make the situation a bit better. The other thing I would encourage us to do as people in here, don't stop learning. Please don't stop. If you still have, if you still struggle with, but she was dressed like this, that's why, Educate yourself. Oh, but you see, that woman, she might have done something to chase away her husband. Educate yourself and always be willing to listen when someone else has a story to share. Last but not least, you and I have a role to play. We can complain about the police. We can, all those are valid. But what you and I are doing, the language we are using, will take us a long way as we fight gender-based violence. Thank you so much for listening.
Yes, I'll also just be brief. I'll just continue from what Faith has said. One, not perpetrating harassment. Let's be the change that we want in our communities. It starts with us, just as she said. Then let's believe the victims and support them. Sometimes even just reaching out, just as Pesh said, many of the victims have different healing mechanisms. Let's give them the space for them to heal, and then let's hold the perpetrators accountable. The more perpetrators that are being held accountable, the more victims will be able to trust the system. The more we'll have to push the system to churn out cases and hold perpetrators accountable and create a safe environment for the victims to report. Thank you so much for listening to me.
All right. Thank you, Diana, Faith, Pesh in absentia. I think she stepped out. And also Stephen, who left earlier. You've all been very eloquent. I don't think I've moderated a conversation on this where you spoke and took the time to make sure we understood the things you were talking about. So let's give them a proper hand clap. And I will now invite Ms. Hasna Natkunda, the Director of Human Resources and Results at PSFU. And as she makes her way here, some comments that came in. While working with communities and targeting young women, men should equally be involved so they understand our agenda for easy adoption. Another comment was, we can work with men as change agents. They serve as peer mentors to their fellow men in cases where the men are the perpetrators.
Thank you so much, Josephine. I'm very happy to see you today, live, not on TV. I'm also happy to see Diana Kagere. Nice to meet you as well. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name, I'm not going to repeat, but Husna, not Hasna, Husna Natkunda. I work with the team at PSFU, and I am the head of the human resource function. I work particularly with the gender team on issues that we are discussing today. So I am privileged and honored to be here. Thank you, Lorraine, our communication specialist. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Francis, for the job well done. I'd like to thank the moderator. I would like to thank you, Josephine. It is a very, very live function. I came in a bit late, but I found it at its peak, and I was happy to dive in and get the feel of what was going on. I would like particularly to thank the panelists. Diana, we thank you for your work as an activist, and thank you for considering to come and work with us as PSFU. We are very thrilled. Faith Murungi, thank you for an insightful session that you have given us. I've listened in. It was quite passionate and emotional. I also had Pesh, and I also had Stephen. Stephen is a brother in practice. We particularly wanted to have an insight on what goes on at the workplace from a men's perspective, and I hope you have gotten the feel of how we look at it, but we really were passionate. We wanted a man to speak about it. So I really hope you got something from the discussion that you had this morning. So our role was to have you here as our lead firms and players in our private sector, that we have a discussion on what goes on. Some of you have been appointed as gender focal persons. We wanted to know whether you really understand what that means and what your responsibility is. So I hope from this discussion you have understood what we mean when we say gender-based violence and what your role is and what the responsibility ahead of you looks like. So today you're going to be ambassadors of those women and men out there who don't know what it means. You might speak to one or two or a few of the staff that you maybe are in your control, but the message is going to go far. So don't underestimate the power of your responsibility or your role. As Diana said, I listened very attentively. We all have something to do, and we need to integrate some of these things that we are saying here. They shouldn't stop here. PSFU is working with the UNDP on a Spotlight initiative, particularly to address issues of gender-based violence. And we are spread across Uganda in different regions, and we hope to scale up and go in many districts and try to, lay a block. We cannot stop this violence. It is far-fetched. It goes down to the root, but we have something to do. And all of us, let me tell you, the stories are not going to stop. Everyone has a story to tell when it comes to gender-based violence, whether it is in our societies, whether it is in our homes, whether it is at workplaces. We have something to tell. But the question is, what have we done about it? What me as Husna, what have I done about it? Have I encouraged it? Have I sat on it as an employee? Or as a leader, have I sat on it? Like, have I gotten an issue of gender violence and I've just said, tunakola tutia mnange, oli mukama waffe, Those are the issues that encourage gender-based violence. So the boldness, the zeal, the assertiveness that we need from every one of you, whether it is a man or a woman, we would like to empower you to tell you that you can do it. So PSFU, again, is in every project that we are doing, particularly this one of MasterCard Foundation, it is a deal breaker. If you are our member, if you're a lead firm, and we have cases of gender-based violence, we will not work with you. So we need to ask you to really step up the game if you have been appointed as gender focal persons, because it is going to come up in audits. And when it comes up in audits, we have not done our job. So through you, we would like to ask you to be awake on these issues, and we try to mitigate the risks. That is all we ask. We can deal with it, but let us mitigate the risks such that it doesn't escalate. Okay, and I hope that really this is something you're going to embark on. We are also going to have an engagement on Friday with the CEOs and managers on the same issues. We have also trained service providers, people who can provide training on GBV to our members, to our lead firms, and these people will be coming to you on need basis. So please, liaise with our teams, and you let us know your requirement such that we can plan appropriately. Okay? And without any further ado, I know a lot has been talked about GBV, and I am not going to add anything new. But I would like to assure you that as PSFU, we have even revised our gender equity and equality policy to reach our members, such that we make it something that all our members need to have. And also through the UNDP, we are encouraging our members to get the gender equality seal. And that seal at least will be showing the commitment of all members towards fighting GBV. So like I said, I am not the speaker of the day. I'm only assigned to call our guest speaker. And our guest speaker is someone known to all of you. She's a former member of parliament. She is a gender activist. She's a retired diplomat. She's one person I know that will tell you if there is an issue of gender outrightly. She will even walk out of the meeting if there is an issue of gender. I have had her tell a given committee that if you're not including women, I'm not going to be part of this. Outrightly. So we would really want to applaud the contributions of Honorable Victoria Seshtoliko as an activist of women. She has kept the discussion alive. For us, we are proud to call her our vice chairperson. And I would like to take this opportunity to invite you, Honorable Seshtoliko, to this discussion. Thank you so much for making time. I know that you have a lot that you could be doing right now, but you have considered to talk to our people. We have had very good discussions with these people. It has been very emotional, but we had panelists who were here to support and encourage our teams, and I know that with your wisdom, you will also add on the same. You're welcome, Madame Seshtoliko. Madam, let us have the speakers on.
I will start at the beginning, and when I come to the end, I will stop.
Okay, you can start now. We can hear you very loud and clear.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you, Husna, and your team for selecting such a fantastic moderator and a panel. Because quite often the moderator can kill the whole thing. Or you bring in a panelist who thinks he has all the answers and kills everything. So really, I've been following from the beginning until now. I loved everything. I know this is a very annoying, frustrating, and really makes one angry just listening to those stories. But I'm happy that those stories are coming out in the open. Because if we are encouraging people to come out, the sooner they do so, the better. But as I was sitting here, I was just wondering. I remember about 5 years ago, I was invited to Nsube Primary School at about this time because it was end of year and the Gender-Based Violence Week normally happens towards this time. So they were about to close for the end of year and they invited me. So I asked them what they wanted me to talk about. And the headmistress of that day, she has since moved on, that they do want you to talk about what you have been talking about, gender-based violence. And I said, but they are primary school kids. I said, yes, and I'm like, okay, how many are they? At that time, they were about 800. So I said, that's a big number. It's a bit difficult to deal with big numbers. Why don't I come and talk to P5, P6, and P7? And she said, okay, even if you only want to talk to P7, that would be fine. But who is going to talk to P1? So I asked her, are they also victims? And she said, it is worse. The younger, the worse the situation. I was so frightened. In fact, by the time I got there and these little girls were singing and dancing, I was not even enjoying the function because I was worried about the gender-based violence because I had been told stories, all sorts of stories, like somebody says, my father raped me, and he said if I tell my mother, he will stop paying school fees for me. This is a P2 kid. Really? I remember I promised to go back. Unfortunately, I have never gone back there. And I think I'm going to blame this on the way we are handling this issue. From what I have heard, I don't think this will be a 1 week in a year function. Then we will get on with our lives until next December. I've been listening to the recommendations, and I want to assure you that I'm not the only one listening. As I was listening, though, I wondered, now that we are thinking going parish model, maybe these meetings, to agree with some people who contributed and who recommended that we take it down lower, maybe it is time for us to look at this parish model and make sure that whatever happens, GBV is in there. Not as, that business of last but not least, but as a priority. Because for as long as the people in power are victimizing those who are not in power, even this parish model will not work. Because quite often when we look at policies and start asking why that did not work, issues like gender-based violence, which could actually influence people turning up for meetings, participating in whatever is going on, are never brought to the fore. So we start thinking people, they are illiterate, they are not interested, they are thieves, skirting the major issue. So I'm just wondering, and I'm throwing this out there so that you start thinking about it. Why am I saying so? Because as PSFU, we work hand in hand with government. So if government is going to approach development through parish, we private sector, CSOs may start thinking, going that route. Why do I think it will work? I'll share a story, a personal story with you. When I was a minister, one day I went home. I'm talking about my father and my mother's home. They were still there. And I remember when I got there, my brother who used to stay at home had twins. And at that time, they were between 2 and 3 years. So, I mean, you know how lovely such children can be. But this time when I visited, they were looking unhappy. So I asked, well, where is your mom? Said, let me say it in Lusoga, then I'll translate. Mama mulwaire baba ya mukuba. Our mother is very sick because our father beat her. I really felt the goosebumps. I thought I was going to strangle somebody. Fortunately, my mother was not far. She laughed, came and said, okay, let us sit down. I'll tell you what happened. Apparently, my sister-in-law was a member of a women's club. She's a fantastic dancer. And it was around Women's Day. So they were preparing for Women's Day. And that particular day was about 2-3 days before Women's Day. So they had been practicing. And she came back a bit late, just before it gets dark. You know, when you can see, but you can't see properly. It had rained a bit. So as soon as she stepped foot in the compound, my brother got out of the house and slapped her. She slipped and fell. Fortunately, my mother was outside and she saw everything. The young lady was struggling to stand up. And my mother said, no. You could have broken something. Just don't move. Stay where you are, I'm coming. So go to the clinic, LC3 clinic, and we said it's just across from our home. So go to the hospital, tell the doctor that I've got an emergency. So if he can come, I want a man and a woman because we may have to carry this lady. So they came. Apparently 3 of them came because they thought it was my mother who was their friend who had had an accident or something like that. So when they got there, she explained, and they professionally carried this woman into her sitting room, which by then had been where they had set up a bed for her to lie down. In the process of waiting for the doctors, my mother whispered in the ear of her daughter-in-law, from now on, you are very sick. You are not going to stand up. You're not going to do anything for the next 10 days. I'm going to look after you. I'll cook for you. The only reason you'll be standing up from your bed is to go to the toilet and to go and have a bath. You are not going to look after the twins. You are not going to look after your husband. So for 10 days, my mother looked after this girl like she was a bride. There was nothing broken. But my mother said, I had to nip this in the bud. I was lucky that I was there. So for 10 days, my brother cooked for himself, looked after the twins, and honestly, by the time the 10 days were over, he had sworn to himself and everybody who was ready to listen, never, ever, ever to lay a finger on that woman. And he never did until now. So when I say, let us take it to the parish, I'm actually hoping we can take it into every home. But having said that, as I was listening, I had my nephew looking over my shoulder, and he was asking, what happened to Matembe's knife? Maybe we need more Matembes. First of all, we need to sharpen Matembe's knife and give it to her, because now that she's no longer a minister, she has more time to go around looking for some of these people who need castrating. That is one. Two, maybe we need more knives around. Because what I find interesting is the fact that at that time, when Matembe had that number which people could call, it really worked. Many people would say, you don't know what to do, just call Matembe. So, young ladies, we now want you people who are following in Matembe's feet to make your contacts known, because it is okay to talk about what is official, which is the police and all that. But like one of the speakers said, so not everybody knows what to do. That is one. Two, really, quite a number of police people don't even know what to do when you go there. So this will have to go further. We as PSFU may have to talk to the police to ensure that when somebody is appointed to be the family police person at a police post, they actually know what their job is. I remember sometime back there was an issue, I think it was in Lida. Some boys were harassing a girls' school, and the girls' school administration went to the police and complained. And this man, we saw the video, who is a policeman, who was the policeman they were talking to, was smiling and saying, for me, I don't know any law which prohibits boys from befriending girls. I mean, here was the headmistress, she has gone to the police, and that's the response he gets. Unfortunately, it ended in tears because recently some boy was killed, something like that, which could have been avoided if somebody had done their job. But maybe on second thoughts, the policeman did not know exactly how to handle, and we all ended up like that. Now, having said that, we PSFU, we are a membership organization. And most of what Husna, our human resources director, was telling you, we enforce it with our members. But then we look at all other organizations and companies which are starting, however small, as our potential members. So one of the things we would like to do is, even before you become a full member, please feel free to share what we have. For us, we do not have like a patent that this is only for our children. It is available to everybody. So if, for example, your NGO is young and you do not have all this information we are talking about already documented, it is okay for you to ask from PSFU, because we shall share. We shall not give you technical support, we shall not give you financial support, but we shall give you information. Because I heard somebody saying that they did not have that information. Now, we at PSFU plan to carry on with this advocacy, because I, for one, until I breathe my last breath, I'm not going to give up on this. Like one of the panelists said, for me, if it is not right, it is not right. Because the moment you start excusing this one and then excusing the other, that is how things fall apart. So what I would like to suggest is that for us as PSFU, this is the beginning. But for me, my recommendation out of this is maybe we should dedicate a day a week during which we all go into gender-based violence. Because it is so expensive to the country. It is so damaging to the young people. Because whether you are young or old, really what happens to you when you are young will affect you for the rest of your life. So even the way you perform or not perform will be referring back to that. You know, when we older women are talking to young women about marriage, or you know, when you marry your man, you trust him. For you, the man you are seeing is that man who raped you. So you wonder whether this grandmother understands, or they are all stupid old women, they don't know what they are talking about. So if there is anything that Uganda can do in order to protect our young people, this is the time to do it. This COVID has really opened our eyes. You know, when somebody says most of the girls who became pregnant because of the failure of us, the guardians and the parents, my heart bleeds. And it's because my heart is bleeding that I want to implore everybody to make this your personal war. Like I've said, my suggestion, is 1 day a week be dedicated to dealing with gender-based violence. It doesn't have to be anything earth-shattering. Even something as simple as today is Friday, and as we promised, we are going to share 2 stories and see how we can deal with them. Because learning never stops. If I can go back to my mother and her son, who was sorted out once for all. Now, fast forward, this is true, this is honest. My mother is dead, and I arrived late for the funeral. Now, when I get there, one of my nephews is married and stays on the compound, but when I get there, his wife is not there. So, and she's my friend. So I asked somebody, where is so-and-so? Looks the other way. I asked somebody else, smiling and looking the other way, until I rounded up my elder sister and said, I want a straight answer. Where is so-and-so? Oh, you see, your son, especially when you say it in Busoga, talk about culture. It's so annoying. Motabanewo, your son got another wife. You see that one seated there. So the other one finds it difficult to be here. And I'm like, he did what? Since when? Oh, I think she's been here 6 months. I just stood up. The young man was there. The woman was there. There were about 10 people. And I told this young man, I was there at your wedding. You are going to tell that woman right now that you are married and that this was a wrong call. She had better leave. I'm going to the town for now, but I'll be back in 2 hours. By the time I'm back, make sure she's gone. So my two people were like, but Victoria, sometimes you exert too much power on other people. Anyway, I did not say anything. I went to town, came back, and the woman was gone. Fast forward, 10 years later, this young man comes and says, I have never had the courage to thank you. But that time I was really cornered. I didn't know what to do. But you these days that talk, they say, Wanjira wo mubiri. You were there for me, and I used you as an excuse, and I have never looked back. So you do not have to be as violent as I was. I was far too angry because, as I told you, my mother had died. Then the whole family was there looking on, like the culture it allows it. Culture is dynamic. So I want to conclude by promising you that PSFU is not going to let this go. Thank you to all of you who are our members. Thank you, Josephine, because even when you are not here, I've seen some of the stories you tell. They are quite touching. So please continue touching the stories. You know I support and love some of the people who you are supporting. So thank you, everybody. I wish you a good afternoon.
I'm afraid to speak after Dr. Sechiteloke has spoken, so I am just going to send you off for lunch so that you meditate on what you've been told and the stories that she'd shared. Thank you all very much. Once again, let's give her a round of applause. A round of applause for our panelists who did a great job. And a big hand clap for the people who brought us here. Please feel free to step out at will, Rebecca, unless you want to say something. No, so lunch is downstairs. You all have a coupon. Yeah, and I know Faith, Diana, did Pesh leave? Oh, okay. I know they are around, so please speak with them at will. You have stories to share, you want to engage them, you want contacts, please make use of them. Have a lovely afternoon.